Good morning. It's now past 9:30, so we'll get started while everyone's getting into their... Oh, you're sitting on this side today. That's different. Normally on that side. So just read some opening remarks before we get started. First of all, please turn off your cell phones or put them on silent. And just to advise you, today's hearing is being audio and video recorded and actually streaming live on YouTube. So for all our YouTube fans out there, hello. This meeting is held in accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, and I'll now call this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for minor variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw, permissions to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to create new lots. To ensure a hearing, I will vet the agenda to determine which applications can be dealt with immediately and which applications require a more in-depth review. So I'll call each item in the order listed on the agenda and ask if anyone other than the agent or applicant, I'll ask if the applicant or agent is here, put up your hand, and then ask if there's other people in interest, neighbors who wish to address the committee. If there are people in interest, the matter will be held until all non-contested applications have been cleared from the agenda. If your item is held, we strongly recommend that you meet with the interested parties outside the hearing room in an effort to resolve issues or concerns or to better understand the application. If no person is present, we'll then go back to the top of the agenda after I vet it, and we'll start off with the uncontested applications. So if no person is present, the agent or applicant will proceed with their presentation if required. The committee may ask questions and then take the matter into the committee for a decision. When you make your submissions, each speaker, including the agent applicant, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee, and Mr. Bednar here is watching the clock. When addressing the committee, please come forward to the podium and hand in your decision request card to the committee staff seated on my right. Then go to the podium, state your name clearly and your address clearly for the record. And if you have written submissions that you read from, please hand a copy to the Deputy Secretary Treasurer when you're done. The applicant or agent has 5 minutes to present the merits of their application to the committee. Then individuals, either in support or opposed to the application, typically it's opposed, will be allowed to express their views. If there are several speakers sharing the same view on a particular application, please select a spokesperson to present the group's opinion. We want to hear your views, however, covering the same points will not advance your cause. Certainly if you're not the spokesperson and you have other issues that have been raised, have not been raised by the spokesperson, or you have unique concerns from your perspective of where you reside in relation to the subject application, you're certainly welcome to come up to the podium and let us know your views, but we just don't want to hear the same points ad nauseum. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker at the end of their submissions. When all speakers are finished, the applicant is given an opportunity to come back up to the podium to rebut only the related issues that have been raised by the other speakers. The matter is then taken into committee for a decision. That will mark the end of all discussion. Please also remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. Okay, I don't have the rest of the speech, but I guess it's the issue of the, after we make a decision, if you're not happy with our decision, you have the right of appeal. As of last year, the appeal now lies with the Toronto Local Appeal Body, or Toronto Local Appeal Body, or TLAB. And to find out more information about TLAB, please visit their website or the Committee of Adjustment website. It's very important, the decision request cards, and when you speak, there should be a pile of cards at the end of the table. And if you fill out one of those, it's important because in the event of an appeal to TLAB, TLAB will be sending notices of hearings and other communications by email. So it's important that we have your email address. Okay, I already covered that. Appeal instructions will be included at the bottom of every decision, and the decision is mailed within 3 business days of today. Okay. One thing I always add when I'm making my opening remarks that's not on our script is that you may notice that while you're making your presentation, we're fumbling through our binders and we'd love to be making eye contact with the speaker at all times, but we have a lot of materials on the application, some of which we just received this morning. So you'll be noticing us with our heads down flipping through our binders, but that doesn't mean we're not listening to you. Okay, some preliminary business, confirming last meeting's minutes. That's the date is, I think it was April 23rd?
No, it's last week, 17th.
May 17th.
17th.
Okay, all in favor?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, the minutes are approved. Declarations of interest. Any of the members have any declaration of interest for the matters before us this morning? Okay. Are there any files to be closed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there aren't any today.
Okay, are there any applicants here who wish to withdraw their application? Okay, we won't deal with deferrals now. We'll deal with that as we go through the agenda. Okay, so we'll now vet the time slot. So, number 1, 994 Dundas Street West. Is the applicant here? Please put up your hand. Any neighbors here in opposition and with concerns on 994 Dundas? No neighbors present? Okay, that matter will not be held. Item 2, 126 Robert Street. Applicant, agent? Anyone here in opposition or with concerns on 126 Robert? No, it will not be held. Item 3, 208 Albany Avenue. Applicant? Anyone here in opposition to 208 Albany? No. 11 Ordnance Street. Applicant here? Agent? Anyone in opposition to 11 Ordnance? Wish to address? No? Okay. 35 Astley Avenue. The applicant here. Thank you. Any neighbors here with concerns on 35 Astley? No. Item 6, 37 Playter Crescent. Applicant, agent. Anyone here in opposition? No. Item number 7, 424 Adelaide Street East. Applicant, thank you. Anyone here in opposition to 424 Adelaide? No. Number 8, 274 Carlton Street. Applicant, agent. Anyone here in opposition to 274 Carlton? Yeah. Okay, that matter will be held. And if you'd like to have a discussion outside, it's sometimes helpful to understand or to reduce issues, but it is not mandatory. Item number 9, 89 Chiltern Hill Road. Applicant, agent. Anyone here in opposition to 89 Chiltern Hill? No. Item 10, 971 Ossington Avenue. Applicant, agent. Thank you. Anyone here in opposition? Item number 11, 20 Douglas Crescent. Applicant, agent. Anyone here in opposition to 20 Douglas? Okay, that matter will be held.
Sorry, just a clarification on 20.
On 20?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to, you're the applicant?
No, I'm the neighbor.
Okay, you're the neighbor. Any other, did the other neighbor and the applicant want to put up your hand so you know where you are if you'd like to meet outside? Other neighbor, put your hand up. Okay, I don't know if you'd like to go and have a quick discussion outside, or you can stay and watch all the other applications. Okay, item number 12, 355 Lansdowne. Applicant, agent. Anyone here in opposition to Lansdowne? Item 13, 20 Queensdale Avenue. Applicant, agent. Thank you. Anyone here in opposition to Queensdale?
Yes.
Okay, that matter will be held. Item 14, 50 Poplar Plains Road. The applicant, agent. Thank you. Anyone here in opposition to 50 Poplar Plains? Okay, that matter will be held. I don't know if you want to have a discussion. You want to put up your hand, applicant for Poplar Plains? Okay, you can have a discussion if you wish. You don't have to. But sometimes it's a good idea to understand the application and perhaps work out some resolution. Item number 15 and 122 Albany Avenue. The applicant here. Any neighbors in opposition to 122 Albany? Yes, that matter will be held. And 16, 17, 18 are being heard together, 1553, 1555, and 1557. Bloor, applicant, agents. Anyone here in opposition to Bloor Street West? No? Okay. So just to recap, the items that we're going to be holding are items 8, 11, 13, 14, and 15. We'll start with the other items. So first application we're going to hear is 994 Dundas Street West. It's an application to alter the existing mixed-use building with retail on the ground floor and 2 dwelling units above by constructing the second and third floor story additions, a rear third story addition, a roof patio and access enclosure, and a rear 2-car garage, and a third dwelling unit will be added. We have before us planning, a previous decision affecting the property, other than the applications filed with the application, the materials, and a report from community planning regarding condition being requested for third floor deck and screening. Good morning.
Indeed. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. If I may just pass along a supplementary document that outlines the presentation.
Okay. Thank you.
So yes, as you mentioned, the proposed second, third front, and third story rear additions.
Start off by giving us your name and address.
Oh, pardon me. It's Jeremiah Fisher of 81 Queens Drive, Toronto, M9N2H5.
Okay.
And yes, if I may, you already went over the brief of the actual proposal. Right. And just a quick note is, this proposal, mainly what we'll be covering is what we found to be a balance between the avenue intensification designated by the official plan for Dundas Street West and the need to preserve the character of the neighborhood and streetscape during this potential transformation over time. The application was thoroughly discussed and reviewed with the planning department to ensure the above criteria were met, and in conjunction with planning a number of variances where they're limited or they're to an extent or eliminated altogether. So if I may, I'm just going to go through, I think, in order as it may be best, and you can follow along in the booklet. I may refer to some images.
So are you revising some of your variances?
No, not at all. I just meant we've been in a decent long process with planning. We do know about their letter and are very much in support of it, and I will address that letter as we proceed.
You've given us, a 9-page presentation. I don't know if committee's members feel we need a real fulsome presentation on this to go through this, or?
I am certainly aware of the 5 minutes. I just want to make sure I had everything with me in case the questions require it. I will do my best to touch on them as briefly as possible.
The only thing that you may not be aware of is the elevations and floor plans that were given to us are illegible. So we actually, if you're going to rely on what you're doing physically, we're going to have trouble understanding them. So if you've got better copies and you're referring to them, you could put them on the overhead. In particular, your south elevation, I can't read it at all.
Oh, it's been printed 9.5, 11 across landscape,
No,
I see.
No, there's nothing there. I mean, half the pictures are missing.
The submission was...
That's a problem for us.
Maybe we can use that, because the submission was given in 11 by 17 with everything rather illegibly. But I think especially that's a very important drawing, so maybe when I get there I can bring it up to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe the booklet will be of more help, actually. Okay, well, we could start with item number 4 on the zoning certificate, which is the proposed use of mixed use, which is the current existing use as well, is of course legal non-conforming use requiring a minor variance. Oh. Yeah. Oh, of course, yeah. The notice, yeah.
When you refer to a variance, we only have before us the notice of hearing. The numbering is different on the zoning review.
So the one you're referring to is number 1 on our list.
Okay, so of course, yes. So number 1 on this on your list is the legal non-conforming use. And what we're dealing with here is that it is an existing legal non-conforming use that does date back on our submitted survey, which the site plan is based off of, to 1956, which is showing a 1-story store there for 61 years. Further research with Ontario Land Survey records indicates a plan dated back to 1931, when this property was first changed to include the store. I would like to bring to attention that there are a number of numerous existing mixed-use properties in the immediate area along Dundas Street, so much so that there's 12 storefronts and 9 mixed-use properties within the 4 blocks between around Gorevale and Shaw Street. You can refer to figure 1 and 2 on page 2 of my supplementary document to view all these properties. And then the other aspect of this I'd like to touch upon is that Dundas Street West, through our research of the official plan, is officially designated as an avenue slated for densification, and this is to encourage a broad range of commercial, residential, institutional, and open space uses, and flexibility for future redevelopment in these areas to accommodate increases in populations, jobs, and etc. along transit lines. And in so doing, we do touch along this a lot in the presentation, that we believe that this type of legal non-conforming use is going to be the future character of this neighborhood, and therefore is of the character of the neighborhood and in keeping with it. If I may move on to another, the next item. Actually, before I move on, you can see on page 3, we do have some pictures of these storefronts along that same area. And onto page 4 of the supplementary document, you can see in the direct vicinity of 994, which is to the right, we have 4 or 5 buildings in that block, in that view, are legal non-conforming mixed-use projects. Aware of time, I think I may move on to another item, unless any questions are emerging now. Okay. The next, I believe this would be number 2 on yours, I trust, because it's number 5 on the zoning certificate, is the floor space index max floor space.
Right.
We are at 1.32 times the maximum FSI, the maximum FSI being 1.0. And what our first thing we'd like to note here is, once again, with Dundas Street West as an avenue in the downtown area that is slated for intensification, we believe that this is a modest increase that does...
Yeah, Mr. Fisher, do you know what the property is currently? You said
Yes.
property
It is currently, the proposed condition is such that it is 1.23, so it is already legal non-conforming, I suppose, and we'd be increasing on, when you actually minus out following the zoning bylaw, we are at 1.32. So the increase...
Non-conforming is with respect to the use, and I guess...
Pardon me, yes.
Show the committee by expanding or enlarging that use that it's no worse than before.
Precisely. The increase is entirely made up inside of the residential part of the building.
Right.
And that does bring into my point in the supplementary document 5.2 regarding the floor space index, is that the property owner intends to continue at this location and requires the space in order to allow for the possibility of a growing family in the coming years. And if the FSI is not increased, as the store is remaining the same footprint, it'd be reasonable to expect that the owner would eventually need to take one of the rental units off of the market for personal use and a growing family, which would ultimately mean a reduction in the number of rental stock in the area. So this minor increase in FSI allows for the creation of a unit. It allows for an expansion of the existing units and allows for a very modest densification of the area as per the avenue designation of intensification without going above and beyond the residential zone.
I think we're at 7 minutes here, so we should probably...
Okay, I will jump, if I may just touch upon the other notes, I apologize.
Well, make it quick because you've gone 2 minutes over already.
Okay. The permitted maximum height, as well as the front sidewalls, which would be the next items. We have a number of properties on the street that are 3-story flat roofs built right to the front property line. We employ as per planning department policy, 1.5 meter setback at the front elevation in order to accommodate this. This is a standard provision for a 10-meter tall building that has a flat roof, where you're no longer allowed to have that. It needs to be 7.5 meters. The planning department specifically mentioned to us that we should have no more than 2 meters over the proposed 10-meter at a flat roof, and should employ this method of stepping back, and we did so.
So you're okay with the planning condition that the planning department is asking for?
They're not referring to that as a condition. This is just a decision built together in conjunction with planning and our discussions. I think I'll skip ahead for now, as I think we can leave it to your questions most likely.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, Mr. Fisher, you're okay with planning department has requested that the third floor have a maximum building depth of 21.59 meters, excluding the deck.
Yes. I can speak to that.
That's already part of your submission, is what I'm saying.
Yes, and that's referring to building depth, and of course the conditions put forward by planning are absolutely acceptable to the client, will be included in any future plans.
Okay.
I think that we're running out of time, very much so. We just want to cover upon the soft landscaping. I think I will leave aside, and I think I will step more towards the rooftop access, if that is an issue that we'd like to discuss.
Well, why don't we just wait, since you're out of time, Mr. Fisher, and
Yes.
see if any members have any questions related to that for you.
Okay, that would be probably best.
Mr. Chairman, unless my colleagues have any questions, the questions I had were actually addressed by the planning department recommendations, particularly the screening of the rooftop terrace.
Yes.
Which I thought posed considerable difficulty for privacy, but with the screening, I think it's probably appropriate. If no one else has any questions, I'd like to move approval of the application conditional upon the 2 planning department recommendations. I think that this is appropriate development, meets the 4 tests, and heralds the intensification of a street that's been identified in the official plan as appropriate for intensification.
Thank you, Mr. Nipfeld. Seconder for the motion.
I'll second that motion. I think the application is reasonable for the area, and therefore it should be approved.
All in favor? You have your approval. Thank you.
Thank you for bearing with me.
Okay, good presentation. Thank you for that. Okay, item number 2, 126 Robert Street. It's the next application. It's an application to alter the existing 2-story townhouse by constructing a 3-story south side addition and a 3rd-story addition with a balcony. And we have on this application, other than the information filed with the application, correspondence from the applicant regarding some last-minute revisions, correspondence from Heritage Preservation, a letter in support from the Harvard Village Ratepayers Residents Association, and correspondence concern from 130 Robert Street. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Ian Starkey. I am the architect and applicant for 126 Robert Street, Sue and Will Grant. I think that you have just confirmed that the information that you have reviewed is the sort of late in time stuff that was provided on May the 16th. I apologize for the, for getting that done kind of after the deadline and stuff, but it was a result of the consultation that we had with the ARVA to make the changes that were acceptable.
Right, so those are changes to appease the neighbors and the Ratepayers Association.
Correct. Yeah, and basically during the process there were 3 things that were removed from the proposal. First was the mezzanine walkout at the 3rd floor level to get out of the roof. We also removed the addition that filled in the notch on the rear of the property. And in the front and rear yards, we're maintaining existing landscaping conditions. So the variances, as they exist under 569-2013, the FSI has been reduced to 1.17.
What's that expressed in meters?
I'm sorry?
If you can express that in meters, it was 131 at 206.22 square meters, so we need to know that 117 expressed in square meters.
Yes, I can just give that to you here for a sec. 185.4.
Okay, thank you.
Meters squared.
Are there any other revisions to any of the other variances as a result of the consultation?
Yes, there was change to the second variance requested in the public notice, and that is the front yard softscaping was changed to reflect existing conditions, and then also the 3rd variance as well, the rear yard landscaping when we removed the addition at the rear.
Can you give us those numbers? You were 36.61. Oh, I see, okay. But we have to, for the record, we have to walk through and revise the...
Sure.
Rather than a letter. So can you tell us the changes to...
Yeah, so the front yard landscape area, 13.93 meters squared, and rear yard... And
expressed as a percentage?
57.3%. 57.3% for front yard. Rear yard, 21.83%, and 15.07 meters squared.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we did. Yeah, the variance for the distance between main walls is removed because we're not actually adding at the rear any longer. And then under
variance number 4.
Yeah, variance 4 under 569-2013. And then under 43886, again, the FSI updated to 1.17. And the second variance under 43886 is no longer relevant, which was the side lot setback. We're not changing any of that now.
Thank you, Mr. Starkey. Let's see if committee members have any questions for you, residual questions after those revisions to the application.
Mr. Chairman, is the applicant aware of the assistant planner's recommendation from Heritage Preservation Services? Have you seen that? It's in the form of a memo. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, permit drawings, including plans, elevations, and details, shall be submitted to the satisfaction of the senior manager of Heritage Preservation, and a heritage permit will be required. Are you aware of that?
We submitted those.
So you don't have any trouble with that recommendation?
No, not at all.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Not a problem.
It's in an email.
Yep.
We picked it, yeah.
Sort of a standard condition when the...
Sure.
Received by us May the 1st, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we have any further questions? Or we
No,
ready for
Mr.
motion?
Chairman, if no one has any further questions, I'd like to move approval of the revised application as noted, subject to the condition from Heritage Preservation Services that I've just referred to, that was received by the Committee of Adjustment on May the 1st. The applicant's to be commended on the revisions he's made and getting the community association on side. That's very commendable, and I'd like to extend the congratulations to the committee. On that basis, I believe that you comply with the 4 tests for variance, and I think this is appropriate and reasonable development for the area.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? You have your approval. Thank you, Mr. Stark.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next application is item number 3, 208 Albany Avenue. It's an application to construct a new 3-story detached dwelling with a rooftop terrace. The existing rear shed will be maintained. We have on this application a report from Community Planning and correspondence in opposition from the Annex Ratepayers Association. We also have planning. I don't know if you've seen the report. Planning is asking to revise the wall height variance number 2. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the panel. It's Mario Silva. I'm the agent for 208 Albany Avenue. I'd like to start. I have a list in here of neighborhood support. If I can pass that.
Great.
Okay, I have a petition supporting the variances requested, signed by 6 area residents on Albany. Okay, yeah, with the wall height.
Have you seen the conditions, sir, from staff on variance number 2?
Yes, I have. We actually, I'd like to revise that variance from 11.95 to 10.88.
Okay.
And this was in consultation with the planning staff.
10.88. And that doesn't change any of your other variances?
No.
I don't see a presentation on this application.
Yeah. So 10.88.
The staff report?
Yeah, I just want to look through the elevations and then...
Just to the height and variance number 2?
Yeah, that's what they've requested, and that's
10.88.
to revise that.
So do we even need to attach the staff condition then if we provide it here?
It's a recommendation, yeah. So I don't believe it's necessary since it's been
No, I don't think
revised.
so either.
What about the ratepayers? Was that the same concern?
Well, they have the concern for the FSI, and I have done a study of the area, and the FSI in the area goes as high as 1.55. We are at 1.23, so I think this is reasonable
Okay.
and within the scope of the...
What about the front yard parking spot on the site plan?
That's not a variance. This is actually on private property, so we are...
There's no variance on that.
Yeah, there's no variance. We are complying with the zoning bylaw by providing a parking space.
Okay, do we need Mr. Silva to make a presentation, or you just have some questions?
I don't have any questions.
Or are we ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion here.
So let's wait
So
for
is
Ms.
there-
Valentine.
I-
No questions?
No questions?
Do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
So I'd like to put forward a motion to approve the application as amended. I think this is fit and appropriate for the area. I think it meets the 4 tests, and therefore it should be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Bednick. The seconder for the motion.
No.
Okay, the motion fails. Do we have another motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put forward a motion to have the application not approved. I believe the Annex Residents Association have made an excellent presentation and have drawn attention to issues such as the floor space index of 1.23, and I'm persuaded by their recommendation. I also go to the body of the Planning Department report, notwithstanding the recommendation, It says that the intent of limiting the front and rear main wall height to 9.5 meters is to allow for a pitched roof design that is not greater than 40% of the width of such walls. And it goes on to talk about pitched roof designs in a particular style being what is appropriate in the area, and argues that this proposal, as submitted, notwithstanding the fact there have been revisions made, is inappropriate in this context. I believe it's still inappropriate in this context, and I'm moving that it not be approved.
I'm going to second the motion. I agree with all the comments that have just been made about the application. I do still have concerns about the height of the proposal, and there were concerns about the deck as well. So I'm
Okay,
seconding.
so all in favor? Opposed? I will abstain to avoid a tie. So the application is refused. Thank you. Okay. Next application is item number 4, 11 Ordnance Street. This is an application to alter the redevelopment plan approved for 2 residential towers approved under a site-specific zoning bylaw by increasing the maximum permissible floor plate size of the 5th story on Tower B. Previous minor variance decision permitted variances related to parking and building height, and there's a concurrent site plan application being processed, so we only have variance for the 5th story of Building B, and we have before us a staff report from Community Planning with conditions of approval.
That's right.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mike Foderick. I'm a lawyer from McCarthy Tatro, and I act for the applicant, BK Prime, which is really a pension fund called Bentall Kennedy. Josh Butcher is the planner from Bousfields who submitted the application. He's here today should there be any highly technical questions. This is a very straightforward variance, one that I hope is completely non-controversial, but the reason I thought I might come in person is just in case there was any questions about the extensive conditions which planning would like to attach, which of course we consent to entirely. And I'll give a little bit of context. I think first I'll just give some context about the variance and why it's in front of you. There were a series of variances identified in December 2016 as part of the site plan process, and this a request for those variances was before this committee in March 2017, and the committee approved those unanimously. What happened was on the site plan, there has always been a mezzanine level contemplated within the tower, within Tower B2, and we weren't counting it, the applicant wasn't counting it as a story, but the city did want to count it as a story. So although no physical change to the building height actually occurred, by calling that mezzanine level in the first floor a story, it effectively became what was 1 story, 2 stories, and it set off the height map.
So is that the last story of a podium or the first story of the tower? Or
that we changed, or Bousfields changed, and that previous set of variances, what the height map described as the highest floor of the tower. Didn't actually increase the height of the tower, just renamed it by a different floor number, right? In doing so, the city seems to have missed in its original analysis 1 variance, and that's what we're coming here to clean up today and to get that variance, because they got the top flight of the tower, but they missed the height of the podium level. And so, although there's no actual change to the floor plate size, no actual change, we're called, what was the 4th story is now being called the 5th story because of that mezzanine level being carried.
That's why, although your typical floor plate is 625 square meters, this one is 1,600, like over double.
It's a podium level, so there's no physical
that was
change.
My question: How is it more than double the size because it's on the podium?
That's right.
Could you clarify? I think I understand it, but
Yes.
What would be very helpful if you could refer to one of the sections we have before us and show us where that podium level is?
I would be happy to do that. And
Need a copy?
Tower B2, and I don't know if Josh, I'm going to call upon Josh to pull up the plans because he's the master of them, and I think he's better able to put it on the projector than I am.
If they're too large, you can just use one of these. I just want to make sure I've got
Sure.
it right. Because it sounds technical to me.
We have, and it is a technical variance, and it's hopefully as non-controversial as the
Yeah,
previous.
it's part of the podium.
Right?
Yeah, that's okay.
So there we have it. So Tower B2, as you can see, there's a mezzanine level in there, so that's like a partial story within the first story, which is an extra high story. So if you called it 1 story, as it originally was called, it was 1 story, and then you drop the height map from there. So we haven't increased, we're not proposing to increase the height of any story, we're not in any height of either tower, we're not requesting approval to actually increase the floor plate size. It's simply the podium floor, which was characterized previously as story 4, is now characterized as story 5. And so the very literal wording of the zoning bylaw requires story 5 not to exceed a tower-sized floor plate size, when in fact floor 5 will be part of the podium now, right? And again, no physical.
Yep.
No renumbering, no physical
Thanks.
change to the building. That is the variance in a nutshell. I do want to speak quickly about the condition, because at a glance, what does it have to do with this, is what one might say.
Yeah.
So I'm prepared to go into as much detail as this as the committee would like to hear about. I will say briefly, there is a project about...
First of all, are you okay with those conditions?
100%. We completely worked with the city to work on those. And there's a property about a kilometer to the west at 25 Liberty Street, which is at the far end of Liberty Village. And our client is in the process of buying that building, and it has existing residential units. And that is an employment area where the city, although it has replacement housing policies pursuant to Section 111 of the City of Toronto Act, it has to replace those units, doesn't want to see them replaced on site because they want to keep that area employment. And so it was a good deal for us, and we are proposing to relocate those units to this site. Now, normally you would secure that against the destination site in the Section 37 agreement. Right. However, we fully baked the Section 37 agreement here a long time ago. This building's under construction at Ordnance. So the compromise we came up with city planning was to use this variance, which we were coming for anyway, as a method to, or as a vehicle to secure those conditions, which normally would be in a Section 37. Okay. So it's just as a matter of convenience, really, and we worked, as I said, with planning to sort those out, and they are parallel to and verbatim taken from the City Council report to approve the development at 25 Liberty, which is being considered with them this week, probably as we speak, in fact, right? So it's then meant to mirror each other, to allow the city, when we enter in the Section 111 agreement, to register it against both lands, and so the housing, the rental housing, can be protected in perpetuity on these lands, which is already intended to be a residential rental building anyway, and that's music to the city's ears. So that's the condition. I'm prepared to talk quickly about the 4 tests if you'd like to hear about them.
Necessary.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Okay, let's see if committee members have any questions for you, Mr. Potter, or if we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if no one has questions, I'd like to move approval of this application. It's very technical, and unfortunate that you had to come back, but I can understand why. I'm prepared to move approval, subject to these extensive conditions by planning, which, as I understand it, are to ensure that replacement housing actually takes place on this site.
Thank you. Seconder for the motion?
I'm going to second the motion.
All in favor? You have your approval. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next application is item number 5, 35 Astley Avenue. It's to construct a new 2-story detached dwelling with front-facing integral garage and rear balconies on each story. And we have before us in this application previous decision of the committee affecting the property, correspondence from the agent, correspondence from Material Recycling Reduction Division of Solid Waste Management. You usually see that. Urban forestry, I believe we have there's no urban forestry condition. I think they just said they're okay. Staff report from Development Engineering and from TRCA. Correspondence and support from 21, 33, 63 Astley and 2 Nesbitt, and correspondence and concern from 30, 32, and 34 Astley, and opposition from 50 Astley. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Ida Evangelista. If I can approach Mr. Chair to hand out some photos.
Of course. Thank you. Okay, so this is a new 2-story.
So I'm here on behalf of Bo and Jenny, owners of 35 Astley. If you take a look at the photos on page 1, it will show you the subject property facing Astley and Governor. We have talked to planning staff. They have no objections to the minor variance application. We've also discussed the application with the councillor's office, and we've met with the North Rosedale Association, and they too have no comments. Transportation has no comments regarding variances 6 and 7 under bylaw 569/2013, and variances 3 and 4 under 438/86. They also have no comments. are fine with those variances. TRCA, Forestry, and RNFP have no objections to the variances, as the owner has diligently worked with them, resulting in the design layout on such an irregular shaped lot with many mature trees. And many of the comments that you saw in the letter of opposition all are relating to the trees. There are 5 trees that will be removed, but they are due to insect disease, dieback, sparse canopy. However, we are planting 11 new trees. We are keeping the vegetation as is. That is the beauty of this particular lot. If you'll go on to page 2, it will give you an indication of the surrounding property, and the photo in the lower right corner is the view to the west, and it shows the tall neighboring homes on the west side of Astley, one of which has sent in a letter of opposition. I do have decisions. I have 11 decisions. These are just some of the ones that I've pulled out. And these decisions show dwelling heights of up to 11 meters, main wall heights of up to 10.68 meters, and front yard setbacks of 0.90 to 6.0 meters. I'm going to just pop on the overhead. So in relation to the front yard setback, as I have mentioned, front yard setback, we have decisions of 0.90 and 6.0.
Can I just ask about that? I mean, I'm not so, I mean, I'm concerned about the number, but not necessarily. Is it going to be more or less in relation to what, is it the current house does not comply?
It is.
So it's going to be cited more or less in the same.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes. I've also included photos of the homes on pages 3 and 4, and as you can see from these photos, I respectfully submit that the home proposed at 35 Astley is consistent with homes in the neighborhood and in the area in ways of height, scale, and front yard setback. So again, from the aerial, you can see that this is the prevailing pattern, and it confirms the front yard setback is consistent. The neighborhood consists of 2-story, 3-story, and semis. Being in an urban area, there is a diverse range of house and lot sizes. The photos on pages 3 and 4 shows the proposed development reflects what already exists and has many characteristics of other homes built in the area and will not destabilize the neighborhood. The proposed variances will facilitate reinvestment in a manner that respects the planned context and existing built form. The proposed variances are minor in nature and will not result in any impacts on neighboring properties or adversely impact the character of the neighborhood. And I should add that 33 Astley has submitted a letter of support, and they are the direct neighbor.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Evangelista. Let's see if committee members have any questions for you or if we're ready for a motion. Thank you for that presentation. So it looks like you have given us a picture of 50 Astley. That's the neighbor who objected. It looks like they're...
Yes, and they, if you could see, they...
Pretty tall.
Pretty tall home, exactly.
61 is even taller.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any
And we also have 47 Astley, which is also quite tall, at 42 feet.
Unless I'm missing something, I don't understand the problem. What you're proposing looks to be considerably smaller in height than all of these examples you've just given us. Is that what you're trying to, because that's what I see.
Yes.
I don't frankly see a problem with the application. Okay.
My point.
Okay, there is no TRCA condition. They're just saying they're fine with it, correct?
Right, and urban forestry has no concerns?
That's correct.
Notwithstanding everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone, yes.
Right.
There's just one from development engineering, which is minor.
Yeah, but I think they retract that, didn't they?
What did they?
Well, I don't know, I put a note here, but. They did retract it?
Okay,
the
so then there are no
renumbering is I was
conditions.
wondering why they needed to
Okay.
renew.
And here's the email from the next door neighbor who's fine with it. Okay.
They didn't retract it?
Engineering?
Yes.
Engineering, yes. They had sent in,
Yeah,
it
they
was
said they
regarding
were-
municipal numbering,
And they retracted it?
and they retracted it.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay.
Okay.
No conditions.
Okay,
Is that correct?
that's good.
Okay. I'd like to, that was a very good presentation, and thank you for bringing in the photos. I'd like to bring a motion forward for approval of the application. I do not have concerns about the variance with respect to the height. To me, it does not look like this is going any higher. In fact, it looks like it's going to be shorter in height than some of the surrounding neighbors. I did have a question about the front yard setback, but you've addressed that and confirmed that, in fact, the proposed it's already existing. So on that basis, I'd like to bring a motion forward for approval of the application. In my view, it meets the 4 tests and is consistent with what is already happening in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Valentini. Seconder for the motion?
I agree with my colleague. I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? You have your approval. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, item number 6 is 37 Playter Crescent. It's an application to alter the existing 2.5-story detached dwelling, not semi, by constructing a new front porch roof, a rear 2-story addition, and expanding the 3rd floor with 2 dormers and a rear deck. And we have on this application 12 form letters of support and a covering letter with photographs from the agent. And that's all we have. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Heather Asquith. I'm the agent for the application at 37 Playter Crescent.
Okay.
With regard to the proposal that you just described, we're requesting variances under both bylaws for a floor space index of 0.84 times the area of the lot.
Could you tell us what the residence currently has as?
The current is 0.7.
Okay. Because permitted is 0.35, but you're already double that.
Yeah.
It's only an increase of 0.14 you're asking.
That's right. The existing house is already twice that allowed. So we're also seeking a variance to allow for a proposed setback of 0.14 meters to the west property line for the addition. This also reflects an existing condition of the current house. We're also seeking a variance to allow a proposed distance of 0.71 meters from the adjacent building to the west. And again, this reflects an existing condition of the current house. We're requesting a variance to allow for an eave projection of 0.15 meters. This is to recognize an existing condition. And finally, we are requesting a variance to allow for an eave projection of 0.51 meters into the front yard and 0.16 meters into the side yard for the new front porch roof. So this is to allow for a reconstruction of an existing condition.
Okay.
So with regard to the requested floor space index of 0.84, there are a number of precedents in the immediate neighborhood for similarly approved FSIs. So 0.85 approved for 8 Playter Crescent, 0.86 approved for 34 Playter Crescent, 0.92 approved for 48 Playter Crescent, 0.91 approved for 50 Playter Crescent. On Playter Boulevard, number 34, an FSI of 0.85 was approved. And similarly, on 9 Herndale Avenue to the south, an FSI of 0.84. There's a few other precedents, Butternut Street and Jackman, that have approvals between 0.85 and 0.89, so we feel like it's consistent with what's going on in the neighborhood. The addition is in keeping with the other 2-story additions on this stretch of the south side of Playter Crescent, and we are not seeking any rear setbacks or building length variances.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Asquith, let's thank you for that presentation. We've shown that other than GFA, most of the other conditions are existing conditions, and you've given us precedence. Let's see if committee members have any further questions for you, or if we're ready for them.
Chairman, I'd like to move approval of the application. In so doing, I'd like to compliment the presentation today, but also the one by the architect Heather Asquith. It was very clear and easy, which is why we don't have any questions. We understand the application. It seems that much of what you're here to request is an existing condition. I don't have any question that this doesn't fit into the community, and it also, in my view, meets the 4 tests for variance, so I'm pleased to move approval of the application, subject to no conditions.
I agree with my colleague. I think this is fit and reasonable for the neighborhood. Most of the conditions are existing, and we should approve it.
Okay, all in favor? You have your approval. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Item number 7, 424 Adelaide Street East. It's an application to modify the redevelopment proposal for a 17-story and 21-story mixed-use building approved under a site-specific zoning bylaw by providing 281 parking spaces, of which 114 will be used for commercial parking and 167 spaces will be used for residents of the building. There are a couple of variances, and we have before us on this application a covering letter from the agent, parking demand study by Cole Engineering, and a copy of the site-specific zoning bylaw, and a report from community planning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tom Halinsky. I'm a lawyer with Aird & Burles, and I'm here for the applicant. As the committee members have seen from the covering letter and the submission, this application is to permit some of the unsold portions of the existing parking garage in the building, and the building is currently under construction, to be used for commercial parking. That triggers a number of variances which all boil down to the same thing, which is what I've just described. As you know, these are mixed-use buildings, 21 stories, 527 units that are now under construction. Because of the reconfiguration of construction of the mechanical room during construction, 4 of those spaces were lost, so that 250 rather than 254 were actually built. And all of the residential units have now been sold, but only about 58% of the existing parking spaces were sold as part of those transactions. So there's a very substantial oversupply.
Curious, how much are those parts?
The price?
Yeah, what was the price of those spots?
I don't know, but I will ask.
Yeah,
They're 40,000 each.
40,000. Okay.
40,000 each?
Yes.
Okay, it's more modest.
So as a result of that, you know, there's a substantial unsold surplus of existing parking spaces, and we're therefore here proposing that 114 of the spaces be used as commercial. Okay. In addition to the 4 lost during construction, 1 would be lost during reconfiguration from, and this is all described in the submission. The variances are basically a total of 281, of which 167 would be for residents, 114 for commercial, to permit a commercial parking garage and to revise the definition of the non-residential GFA to net out the space used by the commercial parking garage. Now, you have before you a staff report.
About that.
Right, which basically does the same thing, but frames it differently.
Visitor parking. It looks like to twig your numbers a bit.
Exactly. So it takes 5 of those spaces and marks them as visitor spaces, even though there are also other visitor spaces in the building, and that's fine with us.
Oh, you said the other visitor spaces, are they those within the 167?
Yes.
Currently?
Yeah. So the bylaw requires 32 to begin with.
Okay.
And I guess this would be an additional 5. And if staff want to break it down this way, my client has no issue with that. And the one that looks like it's substantive, but it isn't.
I'm really not clear now.
Yes.
I thought I had it. So are you saying that there will be, in addition, there will be 32 plus 5 visitor parking spaces?
That's correct, but
where are they?
We're the 32. Yeah.
So there are going to be a total of 281, of which 162 will be for residents, 5 demarcated visitor parking spaces, and
but you said 32 as well. You don't. The 32 are not for resident visitors.
The 32 will be paid visitor parking spaces, and in addition to that, there will be the 5.
Okay. Within the 167, there's 5.
That's right.
Okay,
so
where are the 32? Are they part
within
of
the 114?
Oh, I see. Okay.
So they are paid visitor parking.
Are they marked as visitor parking?
They will be marked as, yes.
So those 32 will not be available to John Q. Public. They'll only be related to visitors of the building, or it's sort of hard to determine that.
It's very difficult to enforce. That's part of the difficulty. They will be widely available to the public, but they will be paid visitor parking spaces. Yeah. So levels 1 and 2 will contain all of the visitor parking, most of which will be paid visitor parking, and then there will be the additional 5.
So it's not really reserved for visitor parking. The visitor parking that is reserved is the 5. Nobody else can park there.
That's right.
Okay. But the 32 somebody else can show up, as long as they pay the tab for the commercial parking, they can park there. So it's not really true to say that they're reserved for visitors.
We could certainly demarcate them as visitor parking. It becomes an enforcement issue, and it's certainly possible to do it. If I cannot guarantee it'll be perfect enforcement, but that sort of mechanism works relatively well throughout the city.
Okay. Mr. Linsky, what about this other condition that, ensure a minimum of 50 of the parking spaces in the commercial garage are made available at all times for the life of the building on a monthly lease to residents of the dwelling units. There are no other parking spaces available for a monthly rate of a total of 200 per month or less. So Mike, how does, parking rates could go up to in today's dollars. Are you amenable to that condition?
My client had further discussion with Mr. Rees, who's the planner who... my client had further discussions with Mr. Rees, and I understand that while we're certainly in support of the first condition, which is the sidewalk condition, Mr. Rees was prepared to revise that. I have an email from him indicating tonight, I apologize, I only have the one copy, but he basically said, if you're okay with the recommendations, I will
this goes on.
So
May 18th,
a new memo, right? Is that right? A new planning memo?
Staff report, if you confirm I no longer did you and your representatives works. Variance number 1 is revised as follows to ensure the supply of at least 5 residential visitor parking spaces in perpetuity.
So that's as per the report. The only substantive difference is that the second recommended condition would be taken off.
Right.
It's a very difficult to enforce condition.
I agree. 281 parking spaces, of which 162 will be for residents, 5 parking spaces for residential visitors, and 114 for commercial parking uses, which of course can people visiting the building, and it's hard to determine if they're visiting the building or not.
That's correct. But there is really ample, there's an oversupply of parking in that building, so that's why it's not an issue for my
No, we have it in.
Oh, we have it in
It's just before the memo you were looking at.
Okay, I apologize. It wasn't posted, so I didn't know if that had made it into your hands.
It's dated May 18th. I don't know, what's the date of that email?
May 18th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So it's the same. It's the same.
It supersedes the report, the staff report, asking for condition number 3. Yes.
So, yeah.
So I'm happy to address that if you'd like me to.
Yes, go ahead.
So in my submission, because as I've said, the revisions, the proposed revisions to the final variants are just a different way of accomplishing the same thing. The notice complies with the Planning Act regulation. The Planning Act regulation requires that, and I have copies if you wish, that an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed variants be set out. And that is, in my respectful submission, exactly what's happening here. The revised variance simply increases the non-residential GFA maximum instead of netting out the non-residential GFA that the parking garage represents from the definition. So it's really just a different way of accomplishing the same thing, and notice of that has been given. The notice cards, in case that makes any difference, indicate that 281 parking spaces will be provided, of which 114 will be used for commercial and 167 will be used for residents in the building. So again, the changes are quite consistent with that. Nowhere in the Planning Act or the Planning Act regulation is there a requirement that the full technical breakdown of what's being done be provided. The purpose and effect has been set out for the public. There's obviously no one who's expressed any interest or certainly concern with it. And in my respectful submission, proper notice has been given. I'm also happy to address the 4 tests if you'd like me to.
Thank you. So basically, instead of 167, it's 162 and 5, it's just semantics.
That's correct.
You're content with that, and
yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out, what notice you've given of the next 2 variances.
So
saying that is under the old bylaw, variance number 2 reflects what?
So in the staff report, paragraph, I'm looking at paragraph 3 on the second page. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the I guess it's paragraph 2 at the bottom of the first page, the revised variance 3.
Yes.
Mr. Rees recommends that the non-residential, that the total GFA number be increased, at the non-residential GFA be increased.
Read this out to me. I don't see variance 3, so.
The problem is they're numbered 1, 1, and 2.
Yes.
So this is variance 3.
Okay.
And this, if I apologize for hovering over the table, but this variance 2, which should be 3, proposes to take out of the definition of non-residential GFA the floor space or the GFA taken up by the below-grade commercial component of the parking garage. Whereas Mr. Rees says instead of doing that, the proposal would increase the cap on the non-residential GFA by the same number, so by the size of that commercial parking garage, which is just over 3,000.
Let's probably go back to the podium because it doesn't pick up the sound on YouTube. Okay.
Would be swapped out.
Yeah,
for that.
and we don't have a problem with notice on that, or?
Well, this is what the issue is.
Yeah, and that's what my,
It's the way it's worded in the variance as
Well, I
opposed
guess,
to
can
the
we hear
new-
from you
so
on
I
that,
just
Mr.
wanted to read
Holinsky,
it.
about whether we comply with the notice by swapping out
just
that
read the
variance for
provision of
this
the-
one?
so that's my submission about the regulation requiring the purpose and an explanation of the purpose and effect of the bylaw, and because there are two ways of doing exactly the same thing, in my respectful submission, you meet the notice requirements.
Okay. And that includes this other, item number 3, the requirement to community benefit, revising the site plan drawings and streetscape permit drawings to provide for an alternative sidewalk and boulevard design that has a wider sidewalk to the satisfaction of the general manager of transportation.
Yeah, so that's the condition of which obviously no notice is required, no public notice is
Right,
required.
of course, yes. It's only the second one.
Mr. Chairman, the question I have is whether the second variance, this number 1, whether in fact the purpose of the application needs to reference the fact that this application is also to allow for a commercial parking garage. It's not in the purpose of the application. The purpose is swapping parking around, but there's no reference here that we're...
Well, it says a commercial parking garage is not a permitted use. In this case, portions of the structure will be used as a commercial parking garage. So
in the purpose of the application, though, should it not mention that...
I don't know if that's just semantics, Madam Secretary Treasurer. Because it didn't have, it was a waiver. I see it was a waiver, but that needs
May I
to be
address
the
that,
purpose
sir?
of the application?
In the second and third line of the purpose of the application, I agree that the notice needs to be read as a whole, but it does indicate that 114 spaces will be used for commercial parking.
I agree that there's
And then in
notice to the public at large by that statement. I think we're okay.
Okay.
Okay. So we have any other questions from Mr. Linsky, or are we ready for a motion? Right, and because in the motion, in the variance 3 that we called it, it basically said that to exclude the area below grade for commercial parking as a principal use will be excluded from the calculation of non-residential GFA. So I think that's where you get into the replacement by what the planner is requesting as the alternative variance.
Is that proper notice?
I think we're okay.
And the GFA in question is the same. It's just a matter of whether we take it out of the definition or increase the maximum.
So this is basically revising the variances, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a condition under section 45.9.
Yeah.
Did you speak to the condition? You're okay with the condition?
We're okay with the first condition. Obviously, the second one's been taken off the table. Yes, thank you.
Well, there's also a condition requiring community benefit under section 45.9 of the Planning Act.
That's correct. And my understanding is that that is the community benefit, that the first, that 3A in Mr. Rees' report is that condition. But in any event, we're okay with it.
You're okay with it?
Yes, thank you.
I just confirming that. Okay. Anybody have any? No?
No, he replaced it with this, so by this memo, he's saying this doesn't
Is
apply
this the
anymore.
same as this?
It's the one on the 18th,
No.
17th.
Yeah, there's one here. Well, how come you don't have the one on the 18th?
Oh, here it is. No.
The 18th.
The 18th, yeah.
Yeah, it's the exact same.
Yeah, but they took out it took out
Okay.
that. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to bring a motion forward. Okay, given the submissions, I'm satisfied with the amendments, the proposed amended variances. I believe that proper notice has been given in my view. So I'd like to make a motion on the amended application as the variances read in the planning report dated May 18th. My motion is for approval of the application and subject to the conditions set out in the planning report in terms of section 45 sub 9 of the Planning Act for the community benefits as outlined in that report.
Second the motion.
Okay. All in favor?
I'm going to dissent on this one. I have some concerns about the notice, as well as, the fact that, some of these spots didn't sell. Perhaps you could have lowered the price and more residents would have actually bought a spot. And I have a concern that, a lot of the time, we have applicants coming to us, changing their parking configuration, saying no one's buying the spots, but they're charging exorbitant rates for those spots. And I know it costs a lot to build underground parking, but that was part of the deal that you got when you got permission to build. So I'm going to dissent on this one.
Okay, I'm going to side with the approval. I think, 40,000 is a really modest at today's standards. I've seen people asking 80 and 100,000 a spot. I think with that, if you're asking those kind of numbers, that argument could be made. But 40, I believe it's less than what it actually costs to build a parking spot. So the motion carries 3-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for bearing with me.
Okay, important application. Okay, application, what are we now? Okay, 8 is being held, so 9 is application, item number 9, 89 Chiltern Hill Road. It's an application to alter the existing 2-story dwelling with attached garage by constructing a 2-story east side and rear addition. And on this application, we have Urban Forestry requesting condition number 1. We have previous decisions affecting the property, including an OMB decision. We have a memo from Right-of-Way Management, actually 2 of them, April 12th and May 18th, and the Urban Forestry condition. We have 5 form letters of support from 18 Avenel, 87 and 91, both next door neighbors, 96 and 98 Chiltern Hill Road. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Brenda Eisen, and I'm the architect for 89 Chiltern Hill Road. It's, as you mentioned, it's a two-story addition in two different locations to an existing single-family home, and today we are seeking 11 variances across 3 bylaws. So in reality, there are 4 items for discussion, one being floor space index, rear yard setback, side yard setback, and parking. And all of those are triplicated over the 3. Right. The site is unique in that it is A, a corner lot, and B, it's been severed by the previous owners in 2009 from a lot that was originally almost twice the size. Our proposed floor space index is 0.72. Which in discussions with planning, they've agreed is consistent with what's going on in the neighborhood. However, due to the small site, if we're granted 0.72, the house will still be significantly smaller than both of its neighbors because the site is reduced. The rear yard setback is where we really see the corner lot coming into play. On one side, we have 91 Chiltern Hill, where existing, it extends 23 feet past the rear wall of 89, and we're not proposing to match it. We have a modest addition to the rear, and we will still be 10 feet short of the rear wall at 91. And on the other side, we have 18 Avenel, with which the shared property line is actually their side yard line. So they're set back 1.2 meters from this line, and they only have one window on the second story. And as a result of the location of this window and the length of their house, we've located the rear addition on the north side of the property in order to maintain sort of their privacy and a backyard to the side of their house.
So I just point out that you have the consent of 91, which is clearly the most affected neighbor.
And what about 18?
We have letters of support from both of those neighbors.
18 Avenel, yeah.
The side yard setback on the north is an existing condition. There's a one-story garage right there, 0.76 meters from the side yard lot line, and we're proposing to build above this garage and in addition, an additional 3.8 meters behind it. And then finally, the issue of parking. I consider this to be a legally non-conforming existing condition because the garage that exists in the house is too small to fit a modern-day car. They're using it for bikes and storage. And so they currently park every night on the driveway in front of their garage. So we're proposing to legalize this. And we are aware of the letter from transportation requesting the reduction of the driveway width. However, after reviewing this, this was an existing condition when the homeowners bought the house, and they'd like to maintain the landscaping as it is.
Okay, committee, any questions for Ms. Eisen, or are we ready for a motion?
The only question I have, Mr. Chairman, is one that's raised by Mr. Filippetti in his report. He's indicated, so I'd like your response to this. The proposal does not illustrate the area for front yard parking on the submitted drawings. I don't agree with that. You've already indicated it's on the driveway that leads to the garage. The property has existing parking on site by use of a private driveway that leads to the attached garage, and as such is not eligible to apply for front yard parking. So according to this, you're not going to be able to apply for front yard parking. You can't get it from us today, and it doesn't appear that you're going to be able to get it under the municipal code either. Do you have a comment on that? It looks as though your suggestion for parking on the driveway isn't going to be approved.
Even though a car can't fit in the driveway in its existing condition, we're proposing to reclaim some of that garage space as interior square footage. So the actual garage wouldn't meet, it currently doesn't meet the minimum requirement dimensions for parking space, but it wouldn't meet the length anymore if our variances get approved.
No, I am too.
The proposal does not illustrate the area for front yard parking on the submitted drawings to correspond to the requested parking variances.
Okay, but she's proposing
Yeah.
to park in the driveway that leads to the garage, and the garage is too small.
Correct.
The property has existing parking on site by the use of the private driveway that leads to the attached garage, yes, and is not eligible to apply for front yard parking.
And they say they have to apply to right-of-way management for
front yard parking.
Front yard parking.
But they're not going to get it. So,
Which is a bylaw governing parking on residential front yards and boulevards. Is the permit only if it encroaches on the boulevard, or is it for both?
it's this is totally on your property. None of it's on the public.
It is not on the city property. It's completely on private property.
So do you need front yard parking permit if it's on private property?
Well, we can just ignore this.
Well, no, I don't.
Well, let them,
The portion of the pavement on the right of way to be removed so that someone can't park.
What if you did that, then she couldn't use the driveway either?
yeah, how do you use your garage, you know? It's, you know.
As I understand it, the garage is too small, so they're going to use it for something else. And the proposal is, correct me if I'm wrong, and the proposal is to park on the driveway that leads to the garage. As I read Mr. Filippetti's report, it doesn't sound as though he'd be prepared to support that and under the municipal code, and that it needs municipal code approval.
Right, but I think maybe the kicker here is where it says the property has existing parking on site by use of the private driveway that leads to the attached garage. Ms. Eisen is saying you can't park, it's too small, and it will be made even smaller. So maybe they will be successful of right away. I think we can't solve that problem today.
No.
So I think we would, you know, I would suggest we just make it a condition they have to apply for it and let the chips fall.
The variance here is that we're permitting parking in the front yard, which we seem to be at loggerheads with the municipal code.
I think it's pretty, Ms. Eisen, it's pretty common in Cedarville and in particular on Chiltern Hill and the surrounding streets to have
Correct.
parking.
Only the newer homes have cars that park in the driveways. All the other homes have cars on their driveways all the time.
Right.
Okay, please bear with me. You're going to have to walk me through this again. Will there be enough space on the private portion of the property for a parking spot?
Yes,
After.
there's more than enough
Currently
space. I'm
is,
just going to.
and there will be. So therefore, a license is not required. Front yard parking license, is that required on private property?
That's correct. So if you can see, I don't know if you can see the numbers on the site plan, but the front yard setback from the property line.
That would be great.
Sure. So the car's going to be parked in this area right here.
But you have a double, is this the asphalt portion, all of this?
Yeah, that might be Municipal
Cut
Boulevard.
off and restore this to grass.
On their property, they can keep that.
Right.
They can't keep it on the city portion.
Which means, no, it says all of it. I mean,
Close that off, I guess.
all of that.
Right. Down there.
That's actually on the right.
Right. Because it
So
looks
that's
now
what-
you can accommodate probably two cars side by side.
That's what they need the permit
least.
for, is on the right of way. Is that correct? Not on private property. What's the plan? Just
Just trying to show us.
Can I, Anita, in order to park in the front yard on her own property, do you need approval?
I see, okay.
No.
No.
Yeah, so it's a huge driveway, so I think maybe, Carl, you want to see that?
We just need a variance.
Listen, I'm more worried about whether or not we need another approval or whether we can, what we can do.
That's what I don't understand.
Well, perhaps
I
it can't be,
don't
you know,
What the condition is that if you approve the front yard parking, the portion that's paved, the widened portion that's paved on the right-of-way, they want to be,
Only the widened portion.
yes.
So
they want the driveway to lead and be a proper driveway, and anything wider than what's permitted, they want it landscaped, so that another car cannot park there, and it doesn't look like a front yard parking
and
pad.
they would leave the section that leads to the driveway.
Yes.
That's okay.
The singular,
That leads to
yeah.
the garage.
Leads to the garage,
Thanks.
okay.
So if you put the condition in, then
To
the
clarify, the
driveway
picture
will
you
be...
showed us, the extra piece would have to be re-landscaped. So you'd have a single car driveway leading to the single garage, whether you use it or not. But you wouldn't have that extra width to park on the
Right-of-way.
right-of-way.
Yeah.
And access through the right-of-way, so they want that,
So just the piece of the
Narrowed.
right of way needs to be narrowed,
Yes.
not on private property.
right. Okay, someone ready for a motion?
Unless anyone has questions, I think I now understand it, and on that basis, I'd be prepared to move approval of the application, which includes parking in the front yard under variance number 4, and subject to the recommendation from right-of-way management that require the excess paving on the widened portion of the driveway within the city boulevard, which could be utilized for unauthorized front yard parking, to be removed, restored to soft landscaping, and also conditional on forestry condition number 1.
Okay, Okay, thank you. Seconder for that
I'm going to
motion?
second the motion.
All in favor? We have your approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 10, 971 Ossington Avenue. It's an application to alter the existing two-story mixed-use building by constructing a third-story residential addition. And we have before us previous decisions affecting this property at the committee, covering letter from the agent, staff report from community planning requesting that it be built substantially in accordance, and a 10-signature petition in support, no opposition, signed by various residents on Ossington and Hallam Street.
Good morning. My name is Kenneth Chow. I'm the architect and agent for this proposal.
Okay.
This is a existing two-story mixed-use building that was constructed in the 1900s with a commercial use on the ground floor and residential apartment on the second. And it's been used the same way since the beginning. It was a store and then converted to a restaurant at one point.
Okay.
The proposal is to add more residential space on the third story.
Okay.
Basically for the same apartment use. It's not two different apartments, it's one. And the variances that are triggered are mostly because of the existing condition. Side yard setback, front yard setback. Now, the density, I wanted to show you that
Mr. Chow, do you know what the existing floor space index is? You're seeking to go from 0.6 permitted to 1.47. Do you know what the dwelling?
the existing, Chair, the existing is 1.05.
Okay.
And also wanted to show you that in the context on Ossington, most of the street intersections, such as this one, which is Hallam Street and Ossington, 3 of the corners have two-story mixed-use commercial buildings, and they're of a fair size. Now, the immediate neighbor actually at 967, which is 2 doors south, we're looking at the rear of 971 Ossington and the rear of 9.
So that goes way further, bit further back.
Yes, it does, and it's a 3-story building.
There's a little third-story addition at the only at the rear.
So that 3-story building is on Ossington as well? It fronts on, or fronts on the?
It fronts on Ossington.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just 2 doors south, basically.
967 building.
How is this one going to be constructed? It's going to be at the front? Yeah, but if you could just speak to the height, because I had a little issue with the height variance requested,
Sure.
and whether it's in keeping with what you've just shown us.
The
Next door.
The current height that we're proposing, even though on paper it looks like 12.06 meters, 1.06 or 1.1 out of that is actually the guard. And for mechanical equipment services, we actually need a guardrail on the rooftop.
So is that just a portion around the mechanical that's going to be the extra meter higher?
No, the entire perimeter will be 1 meter higher, but we're only doing a solid portion for screening at the back. And you can see that on the side elevation, the north elevation.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think I see that community planning is requesting that it be in accordance with the north side elevation, including the building height of 12.06.
That's correct.
Which is limited to the rooftop parapet. That they're content that to be tied to those plans?
Yes.
That you get that height?
That's correct.
Based on tying it to the north side elevation.
And we've met with planning from January onwards, so.
Okay. Okay, so we have the staff condition looking to tie it to the north elevation.
Top grid will be maintained at a height
Says the increase in height is associated with the rooftop parapet feature, which will aid in shielding views to the rooftop mechanical equipment. The top of the third story will be maintained at a height of 11.02 meters and is designed to step down in height to 7.52 meters towards Ossington.
And the 7.5 is referring to the existing two-story portion, and we're stepping back from Ossington.
So it says, therefore, a condition to limit the building height to the rooftop parapet and third-story front step back, as shown in the north side elevation plan, will ensure that the building is constructed in a manner which respects and responds to the built form and character of the area.
Okay. Yes, and we're happy to comply.
Okay, we ready for a motion?
Ready?
Yep.
Any questions?
Yeah, you see both the adjacent neighbors are consenting on Ossington as well as neighbors on Hallam. Okay. Anyone ready for a motion?
At the rear. Check.
Anyone ready?
Mr. Chairman, unless other people have questions, I'm going to bring forward a motion of non-approval. I am very concerned with the height of the building, notwithstanding the very minor setback on Ossington that has been negotiated through planning. It is still, in effect, a three-story building with a substantial parapet on top of that, and that's particularly visible from the side street, this view that we have here, which will be a three-story building, which I personally believe to be inconsistent with the area. So I'm going to recommend that the application not be approved on that basis.
Thank you, Mr. Nipfel. Do we have a seconder for Mr. Nipfel's motion? Okay, the motion fails. Do I have another motion, please?
I'd like to move to approve the application. I don't think it's out of character for the neighborhood or unreasonable density for the neighborhood. I'd like to tie it to the recommendations from staff on the height and the building height of 12.6 meters, which will be limited to rooftop parapet, and then substantially in accordance with the north side elevation received by the Committee of Adjustment on April 11, 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar.
I think in this case, I'm going to second the motion, and I think for me, the difference in terms of the height impact is the step back from the front. It's not a huge step back, but it is a step back, and I think it does add to soften the impact in terms of the height from the frontage of the property. And given that there is a building adjacent to it, which extends much further, well, maybe 2 stories back, further back, and it's as high at 3 stories, I think in my view that this is more in keeping, or this is in keeping with what is existing on the site or close to the site.
And I would add to that I think that it's certainly preferable than going back in terms of adding additional, as what was done at 967. I think this is much preferable and probably better for the neighbors. Even the neighbors on Hallam Street would prefer that than going it back, and certainly impact on the properties on Hallam. So motion, all in favor, motion carries 3-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next application is being held. So we'll move over to item number 12, 355 Lansdowne Avenue. It's an application to alter the existing 2-story detached dwelling with 3 dwelling units by constructing a rear 2-story addition, a rear basement walkout, and a rear ground and second floor decks. And we have before us on this application a staff report. We have nothing, no communication from area residents other than a staff report advising that they cannot support the proposal in its current form. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Philip Milinar, 355 Lansdowne.
Okay.
So I just had a last-minute discussion with Michael Vieira, who is the constituency manager of Deputy Mayor Anna Bailon. And I did have...
Sorry, who's that?
Michael Vieira. He's the constituency manager of Councillor Anna Bailon.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I would like to request a deferral from the committee, and I have a letter of support from the councillor's office that I can...
Okay, you want to bring that forward? Thank you.
So essentially the proposal here was to take a legal triplex and turn it into a 9-bedroom triplex, so going from 4 total bedrooms to 9 total bedrooms. After reading the assistant planner's report, it appears that the point of contention is the step back for being in keeping with the neighborhood. So I guess this is, I'm new to this process, but I guess a what-if question to the committee, given we're going to go back and work with the assistant planner and the councillor's office to put forward an application that will be approved, is Malad and the assistant planner really highlighted the step back. The depth was not a problem based on the last paragraph of his report. It was maintaining that step back.
Okay, so, sorry, Mr. Milinar, you're asking for a deferral, so there's no point getting into the merits.
I thought you might say that.
Let's, vote on the deferral, which is supported by the councillor's office, and obviously staff saying they can't support it in its current form. I think that's all. We'll come back another day in the event that the deferral is granted, and we can make those discussions then.
Okay, understood.
Application. So on the matter of deferral for...
I just want to confirm the purpose of the deferral is to work with staff in order to come up with an application or proposal. That's
correct. The proposal is to extend the depth and maintain the step back. So I'm not sure if the committee would in the future support increasing the depth.
We're not going to go there. I just want to make sure the deferral is for a proper purpose.
Understood.
To actually work with staff. And
okay, correct.
Yes. Okay. On that basis, then I'm willing to bring a motion forward to support the deferral request.
Okay.
Favor, you have your deferral. We'll see you again. You're going to have to, just standard conditions, you'll have to pay for the recirculation.
Okay.
Notices to area residents.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you again.
Wasted time. We took time to doing this.
Anyway.
Site visits and everything.
Okay, the next 13 and 14 and 15 are being held. So we'll move on to 16, 17, and 18, which we'll hear together.
So we're on 16?
Yes. 16, 17, and 18, we're going to do them all together. It's an application to alter approved building permit plans, the expansion of a mixed-use building to a 4-story building by converting the ground floor space to residential, converting the 4-story building into a 5-unit residential building. For item number 17, similarly to permit the expansion of a semi-detached mixed-use building to a 4-story semi-detached and making it a 5-unit residential building. And the same thing for Unit 18. Just point out that it looks like there's a bit of an error in the notice in terms of which building of the 3 is the single and which is the semi. Oh, sorry, that's in the staff report. Okay. And we have on this previous decision affecting the property a covering letter from SGL Planning, the agent, and staff reports from Urban Forestry requesting their urban forestry condition number 1 on applications 16 and 18, but not 17. And we have community planning report dated May the 18th. With respect to refusal, they want us to refuse one of the variances. I had variance number 3 requiring the only non-residential gross floor area permitted within the 1st story with the exception of entrances and lobby space. So I think they don't want you converting the ground floor to residential because they want more animation on the street. And that's what we have before us.
Mr. Chairman, I think the error is in the presentation by SGL. It's in the context as they describe it. We believe that's incorrect.
Right. I think 155, 1557 is a single, and the other two are semis. Also, 1553 and 1555 are owned by the same numbered company, and 1557 is owned by a related, assumingly related, but different company, corporation. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne McDonald. I'm from SGL Planning Design, and so I'm representing the owner for the 3 properties. And I will speak to all 3 applications in my presentation, and I'm going to focus my comments today on planning staff's comments in their letter. So I'll speak. There are 3 variances for the property: GFA, parking, and the ground floor use. And I'll focus simply on the ground floor use. And then if you have further questions on the other minor variances, I'll be happy to speak to those separately. So just to provide a little bit of context, these were existing residential buildings that were being retrofitted. They were not, it's not a tear down and rebuild situation. They were existing originally residential uses, and the main framework of the 3 buildings is being maintained through the proposal, including where the floors of the existing floors within the building is being maintained. Currently, the basement is below grade, and the first floor is quite a bit above grade, in the around 2 meters above grade. So one of the challenges with these buildings is that you don't have good access from the street. Once you get into the building and under the drawings, you either have to go up a set of stairs to get to the first floor or down a set of stairs to get to the basement. So that's one of the challenges presented with these buildings, given that they were built originally for residential uses and not for a mixed-use purpose. So I'll speak briefly to the tests under the Planning Act with regards to this ground floor residential use that's being sought. In terms of the conformity with the official plan, mixed-use buildings are not required under the mixed-use designation in the official plan, so we are in conformity with that. There's not a requirement that every building be mixed-use. And I note that recently the city undertook an avenue study in this area, so they did at that time have the opportunity to put that requirement in at the official plan level. They did do an OPA as a result of that study and opted not to. In my mind, this is recognition that in this area, not every building is appropriate to be mixed use, and in my opinion, this is one such case because we're dealing with an existing residential building as opposed to a new build, and that's very important in my mind. Regardless, the permission for a single-use building does conform with the mixed-use designation in the OP. In terms of the zoning bylaw, the intent, and this is spoken to in planning staff's comments, the intent of the mixed-use building is really to have a vibrant streetscape and keep eyes on the street. But we note here it's very difficult in this situation because we're dealing with an existing residential building. And I mentioned the disconnect between the sidewalk and either the basement or the first floor level. There's stairs there. So there's an accessibility issue in terms of creating a unit that's accessible to the public and customers, clients, however the building were to be used. And we don't have the 4.5 commercial first floor that you typically expect if you were doing a new building. So that's one of the concerns. And the concern is that without sort of an effective functional non-residential space, there might be issues attracting tenants to the area, and if you don't get the tenants, you're not getting the eyes on the street and that vibrant streetscape that city staff and that planners we want to support. But in terms of the intent of the zoning bylaw, the residential at grade that's being proposed here, that would still contribute to the streetscape. It's works within the existing built form of the building. In terms of whether or not the application is minor, we look to what impact is it going to have on the overall streetscape, and I'm going to hand out an image to help illustrate my point. Them over here. So the point that I really wanted to illustrate with this figure is this is looking at the built form along the south side of Bloor in this area. And if you look, it's a bit difficult to see given the foliage, but essentially what I'm trying to illustrate is you have already a mix of what's going on in this area. In this stretch, you have some commercial uses in residential form, some residentials in a residential form, some, there's a hall there, it's also a bar, there's a full residential apartment building down the street a little bit. So there's already a mix of what's going on in the area. It's not a consistent mixed-use streetscape that you would see in other areas throughout the city. And in particular, it's not even consistent to what you'd see on the north side. On the north side, you have full long length of a mixed-use streetscape, but this is a very different character on the south side, and it's remnant a little bit of Roncesvalles, where you have very different characters on opposite sides of the streets, and so that's what I was hoping to illustrate with this figure here.
So your property there is set back further. It's not like it's right at the street like it is on the other side.
It's actually quite close. The way the building is it is quite close to the sidewalk at the front there.
I'm just looking.
Yeah, down the street. Yes. Is with the blue? Yeah.
So you're right at the street. I can see the other one, it being set back, looks more like a.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's right at the street.
Issue with the,
They want commercial on the ground floor as better eyes to the street.
why is it? Okay. Can I ask a question at this point?
Sure, absolutely.
I note in this planning report they mentioned that two of the buildings did contain commercial uses as recently as 2014. So why is that an issue now in terms of commercial?
There were commercial uses in the buildings, but they were similar to the red line there. It was basically a house that was being used as a dental office, and they weren't accessible from grade. It had a similar issue that we're having now, and I can actually show you a picture of how it used to be. Before construction started for the building permits that were recently approved, you can see that, yes, there were some of these, I don't believe all of them were used for commercial, but I'm not sure. But again, you have the issue of you needed steps to get up. So there's a few steps to get up to the front, another 5 or 6 maybe to get inside. And so in the proposal, the concern is that even if they put the stairs inside, you have an offset between the sidewalk and where the units would be. And I believe, like, if you look at the basement of what's proposed, you're coming into a hallway and then have to go downstairs in order to get to the basement. So that's the concern, that functionally these don't work as great commercial units. And the owner wants to avoid creating a situation where, tenants or clients would have to access stairs to a commercial unit. Sure. Yeah. And so now it's currently under construction for, there's building permits sought for what's under construction, and we want to change that, so that's why we're here today. Would you like a closer look of the building under construction?
Yeah, because I just want to see if, like, I understand you're explaining the current situation, whether you're changing that at all that would make it more suitable for commercial, and whether you could.
Yeah, well, so the problem is that because it's not a tear down, where the first floor starts, so basically there's a gentleman there, around the top of his head is where the first floor technically starts. So we're looking at about 6 feet. And so that's the issue, is you either need stairs to get up to that first floor, or you need stairs to get down to the basement.
But that photograph, unless I'm misreading it, doesn't appear to comply with, or doesn't agree with the elevation drawings you've submitted to us, which are A5.00. On those, the bottom of that lower window is grade. Or, no, I'm sorry, it isn't. My mistake, sorry. Okay. So on your proposal, there is a concrete wall, then a window, then the first floor, right? So the first floor begins at the end of that ladder.
The first floor would start at the end of the ladder, and there would be a door agreed so then you go in the door and then you go up to the first floor.
What's behind the window that's behind the ladder?
That would be a window into the basement. So if I'm standing in front of that window, I'm looking down into the face it.
So in fact, that's not going to animate the street very much.
No, exactly.
And that's the existing condition?
Yeah.
In terms of where the floors originally fell?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, there's so much, it's changed so dramatically that it's really hard to tell, but...
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Should I continue? Yes? Any questions about that? Okay. And so just in summary, the last planning test of the desirability and whether or not it's good planning, in particular in this case, because the main factor in my mind is that you're reusing an existing building and the challenges this poses to effectively create a functional commercial use that would contribute, that would be accessible and would contribute to animating the space. And that tied with the fact that what we're proposing doesn't disrupt the streetscape. And also, very importantly, what we're proposing is actually 3-bedroom units. So in total, there's 15 3-bedroom units, all rental, all in this area, which is very accessible by transit. So that to me is a very good thing. So I'll leave it with that, and if you have any further questions about this or the other minor variances. Oh, and also we have positive comments, positive letters of support from the neighbors, which I'm not sure if you were circulated on because they were very last minute.
The question I have is relative to parking. There is parking provided in one of the units.
This is correct.
Could you go to... Is it behind the stairway on the site plan? Is that correct? It's so small we can't read them. A1.00. Because you've got a large paved area on the public right-of-way. If you could put A1.00 on the overhead.
Yeah, they're all.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay, so you don't need that full driveway width, do you? Because it drives into a stairway. The gray part is paved on the side street, is paved.
Yeah.
And the X, am I correct, is the parking space that you're proposing? So you don't need the full paved boulevard that you've got currently? I know, but you don't need it, right? You're only accessing the X where the parking space goes. Normally, there would be a condition here from right-of-way management for you to return half of that shaded area into landscaping. We don't have that condition, but I want to just make sure that I understand it. So the gray part's currently existing asphalt, and the area that you're proposing to use for parking is where the X is.
Correct.
Thank you.
We have 3 applications here, so.
Disagree with the planner's comment, like there's not much you can animate.
Sure there is. There are other solutions.
You're maintaining it as a traditional house building, as opposed to incorporating a redesign to permit commercial, but you said it is challenging because of the fact you have to go up or you have to go down, and it's not really at grade.
And I guess it just, given the smaller size of the site, it didn't make sense to tear the whole thing down.
And I guess you said these are all 3-bedroom units, which are quite, I guess, rare in terms of family size. I don't know if you're going to have families or you're going to have 3 roommates sharing or 6 roommates sharing.
Yeah.
But it does give you typically units are, like in the newer condominium towers, the units are getting smaller and smaller, and there's a concern about accommodating families.
Yeah. Total of 15 units.
Right.
And then if commercial is on the first floor, you're not permitted to use the residential, my understanding is, for residential, so that impacts the number of units.
Right. Okay. Someone ready for a motion?
Okay, I'm ready to bring a motion. I guess my point, my issue is the fact that how do you get over the hurdle that this meets the purpose intent of the variance meets the purpose intent of the zoning bylaw? I think it's clear based on what the zoning bylaw says that the ground floor is not to be used for residential. There has been commercial historically uses in the ground floor of these 2 buildings. So in my view, I don't think this proposal meets the purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw, so my motion is for refusal of the application based on the fact that it doesn't meet that test.
And that goes for all 3 applications?
Yes.
Okay, seconder for the motion?
I completely agree with my colleague. This is an important bylaw principle to animate the street. I actually put this in my notes before I got the planning department recommendation. The recommendation clearly reflects my own views, and so I'm prepared to support the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? I will abstain to avoid a tie.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is on all 3. We don't have to go through the motion on all 3 of them, I would take it. Okay, so all 3 applications are refused. And thank you. Okay, so now we're going to return to the held items. Just to recap for everyone who's still left here, we'll be doing in order items number 8, 11, 13, 14, and 15. So the first application is item number 8, 274 Carlton Street. That is an application, just bear with me for 1 second. Would the neighbor who has objections please come and join us at the front of the room at this table on the side?
It was just a question about a window. It wasn't an objection.
Sometimes consultation asking question.
Funnily enough, I spoke to him a week ago.
Okay, Mr. Smith. So this is convert the basement of a 2.5-story townhouse into a residential unit and construct a rear basement walkout, a 3rd floor rear addition and a balcony. And we have on this application 2 form letters in support and the staff report from Heritage Preservation Services with a recommended condition of approval. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is David Smith. I'm here representing the homeowners at 274 Carlton. Before you is a very minor application, quite straightforward. Let me know if you need a presentation or if you have
I don't think we need a presentation unless committee members do. So we have the. You're okay.
Heritage condition?
Yeah, that was.
No, we're fine.
Okay.
I'm ready for a motion forward. So this is a very minor application, fit and appropriate for the neighborhood. I was surprised that there was a neighbor here dissenting on it, to be honest. I'd like to put forward a motion to approve the application tied to the recommendation from Heritage, and I think it's fit and appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. Seconder for the motion. All in favor?
I second.
You have your approval. Sorry you had to wait around so long.
It's the way it goes. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Item number 11, 20 Douglas Crescent. It's an application. Would the neighbor please come forward? Neighbors, come join us at the front of the room, please. Okay, this is an application to construct a new 2-story detached dwelling. And we have aside from the application, in the materials filed with the application, we have a copy of a revised site plan, floor plans, and elevations. We have correspondence from the agent, Frank Falcone, requesting elimination of certain variances 1, 3, and 4 under the bylaw 567/2013 and under the earlier bylaw. We have a report from TRCA. They indicate they're okay with it. The application, we have correspondence concern from 31 Douglas and correspondence and opposition from 18, 22, and 24 Douglas. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir, and members of the committee and staff. My name is Claudio Bruto. I'm here on behalf of the architect who could not make the meeting due to personal family reasons. As a planning consultant, I've become well versed in the subject property. I've attended on site. I've reviewed the file, and as you note, there have been significant changes to the nature of the application where 7 variances had been sought, and now only 1 remains, and that is the issue of FSI. And I have had the opportunity to speak to the neighbors on either side who have appeared this afternoon. I believe that when they take the podium, they'll advise you that they're satisfied as long as it's just the 1 variance that remains in place. They just wanted to make sure on a belts and suspenders approach, which I don't blame them for at all. This application is for a 2-story building, which is about 3,200 square feet. So it's fits well within the neighborhood, and there have been a number of renovations and rebuilds in the neighborhood. I do have photos.
Anyway, Mr. Bruto, I see that the only variance left is for a 0.05, which translates to about 22 square meters.
That's correct, sir.
Permitted. That's extremely minor. So perhaps we can hear from the neighbors, and I don't think we need a whole fulsome application.
I'm happy to stand down, sir.
Okay. Thank you. We have a spokesperson for the neighbor? Oh, sorry, I thought that's already been sort of accepted into, we have the marked up application. I guess he's eliminated every variance other than variance 2 under the new bylaw, variance 1 under the old bylaw. As to the FSI, everything else is being withdrawn.
I have a red line marked version.
Yeah, we have a copy too.
I believe they do, and we did speak about it.
Yeah, it was revised May the 3rd, it looks like.
Mr. Chairman, even the 2 that remain have been revised. So all of the others are deleted, and the only ones that remain in my notes are 2, and the numbers have changed, and 1, and the numbers have changed. And if you just go through the changed numbers so that we've got it on the record, that would be helpful.
Yes. So I'm satisfied.
So it's just the 0.65 is the new...
It's been reduced from the 0.69 as well, yes.
300.07 square meters from 318.66.
And every other provision of the bylaw, it either meets or exceeds. In terms of heights, it's below. The actual side yard setback had been over, and it's now under, in fact. So there's been a lot of work between our client and the city, and certainly with the input of the neighbors, we're satisfied with the application.
22 square meters, you're in compliance, right?
Everything's in compliance, sir, yes.
Great. Okay, we have a spokesperson for the neighbors?
Sure. Can you come to the podium, please?
My name is Andrew Hainsworth. I live at 22 Douglas Crescent, which is the immediately adjacent neighbor on one side, and Mark Rydell is the neighbor at 18 Douglas Crescent, the immediate adjacent neighbor on the other side. We were just really here under a technicality, had understood from the clerk that the original application had 7 variances, and he said the applicant would make a petition to the committee to reduce that to the 1 or 2 sought here with the revisions, and we just want to make sure that happened, and we are fine with the 0.65 FSI. I think I speak for both Mark and myself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hainsworth. Mr. Rydell? I guess there's no rebuttal necessary, Mr. Bruto, so let's take it into committee for a motion.
So, anyone have any further questions? I'd like to put forward a motion to approve the application as revised. It is extremely minor in its current state, and I don't think there's any variance or any requested variances or conditions, so. No.
I'm going to second the motion for the revised application. I think the revised application meets the 4 tests, and that both adjacent neighbors are happy, so I think it's a good thing. So my motion's to support that.
All in favor? You have your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, applicant. Thank you, neighbors. Thank you.
Okay. Next application is item number 13, 20 Queensdale. This is an application to alter a two-story detached dwelling by completing interior alterations and by constructing a rear two-story addition, a front porch, and rear deck. We have before us on this application just the materials filed by the applicant with the application and a correspondence and concern from 22 Queensdale next door. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Kyle Kadra, the agent for this application. I'm just going to make a very brief introduction. We are proposing a rear addition and second story, just a rear addition for this house. Right. The frontage of this lot is 4.9 meters, and the side yard setbacks are due to existing conditions. The addition will not include a basement, and the existing basement is not usable for living space because the ceiling height is quite low, and using the basement and underpinning it is not an option, or excavating for it because of the width of the lot, because it's going to be quite dangerous to underpin and do the excavation and due to the proximity of the two adjacent houses. So we are proposing to do an addition at the back, a two-story addition without a basement, and we have a variance for coverage and for floor space index. So I'll leave the floor to the, if you don't have any questions.
Yeah, lot coverage. And okay, let's hear from the neighbors, hear what their concerns are, and you'll have a chance, Mr. Kadra, to respond. Can you please come to the podium? Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you. Do you have a copy for the applicant as well?
Mr. Chairman, could the applicant put on the overhead either the survey or the site plan, because I think this presentation is going to rely on that. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jody Blakey.
Just to realize it's pretty good to have these hard. We do have a copy of your letter, but the color photos help.
I thought they would. My name is Jody Blakey. I live at 22 Queensdale. I'm just east of 20 Queensdale.
Okay.
I'm here to talk about the variances being requested, particularly the setback measurement, and also the length and the magnitude of the extension. So we did speak prior to the hearing, and my understanding is Kyle has agreed to amend the setback in the backyard from 0.41 to 0.94 on the main level and 0.55 on the second story. That's my understanding, that he's made that adjustment.
I'm not aware of any adjustments to the application. He just gave his brief presentation, so he didn't tell us about that. So we currently have a side yard setback of 0.13 on the west and 0.37 on the east. You said he had agreed to change it to?
We spoke before the hearing.
He can't change the existing portion of the house. It would just be the addition you were talking about?
That's right. The request that, this is new to me too, sorry. Yep. He just told me today. He asked for 0.37, but
right.
I don't agree with the 0.37 setback, because that will completely eliminate the opportunity to access the backyard from the street. It also doesn't recognize the 0.41 right-of-way that exists for approximately 2 meters beyond the back of the house on either side of the property line. So I just want to make sure that is kept in place. And
you're on the east side. And
I am.
There are, and I appreciate this may be confusing, there's a proposal that the east yard setback be 0.37, and there's a proposal that the the west side be 0.37. Are you concerned about both the east and west side? Because the right-of-way is on the east side, right?
I'm on the east side, and I'm
right-of-way
concerned about the east side, yeah.
So you don't,
And my understanding is the west side is 0.17, which is extremely close. I don't know if that neighbor has
0.13.
participated.
Carl, you just said 0.37 on both sides?
I'm reading side yard setback will be, oh, pardon me.
I'm looking at variance 1.
It's 0.17 on the west side.
Yeah.
So 17 centimeters on the west side and 37 centimeters on the east side, but I do have a right-of-way of 0.41
On the east
on my survey, yes.
Okay, thanks.
On the neighboring property, not,
On either side of our
was
properties,
it 0.41?
on both sides.
But he's asking for 0.37 from his house to the
The
lot.
property line.
So that still preserves the 0.41, doesn't it?
No, it's,
And how can he can't build over the right-of-way?
Are you sure?
Yep.
I want to make sure I understand this correctly.
Yeah, he's building, based on her submission, he's building on the right-of-way.
I actually didn't think I would be talking about this because he agreed to 0.94 and 0 on the ground floor already. So.
We have no communication, Madam Secretary Treasurer, from planning on this application, correct?
Okay, my glasses. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Since we're coming up here, applicant, if you would like
Do
to
you
come
wanna
and
come
join
up
us here? Applicant, Mr. Kadra?
Oh, I see, on either side of the property line.
On either side of the property
Please
line.
come.
And he asked for 0.37.
So,
So we are not proposing to build on the right-of-way. It's going to be maintained completely. And I was planning to address the access to the right-of-way in a solution that would not actually change the variance for the side yard setback because the second floor still have the same.
But you're asking for 0.37.
so he's going to jog the first floor back.
It's
Is
going
that
to
what you're
be-
doing?
Yeah, because the lot width reduces at the back, so here where the addition ends, the setback is 0.37, but it is not encroaching on the right-of-way.
But it would be here.
So it's 0.41 here. Yeah, how do you?
Yeah, the lot, no. at
So
the
you
back
can't
here-
go, pardon me, you can't go past there. But you're asking to go into 0.37.
Yeah, the 0.37 is measured at the corner here, but here, it's still the same.
Okay, that's not what this says. This talks about a east side yard setback of 0.37. You're talking about a varying side yard setback. That's different than what you've asked
The very
for.
back corner of the addition is going
Yes.
to be 0.3.
So it's not going to encroach on the right-of-way.
Property lines are not parallel, is that
No,
what it is?
Yeah, it's narrower at the back.
Either way, 0.37 or 0.47 is a variance. My understanding, there's two bylaws. One says it's 0.9 meters. That's my expectation and hope for today.
Yeah, probably go back to the.
So even with a 0.41 centimeters, will not allow for garbage bins, bicycles, lawnmowers, anything to go through to the backyard. So where are all of these items going to be stored? It's not a practical use of space if you don't have a setback allowing movement in between the front and back yard. So I'm concerned about that. It's also going to literally be, essentially be a wall along the west side of my property.
So your concern is not just about the right-of-way and the issue with the setback, your concern is with the length of the addition as well?
Absolutely.
How does that fit in with what is
no length or
currently?
depth.
There's not, but there is a
Yeah.
GFA and a lot
Yes,
coverage,
for
so.
sure. Yeah.
So if we talk about the permitted floor space index and the permitted lot coverage, he's asking for a variance there. So the current house is 7.34 meters deep, and he's wanting to extend it by 6.3 meters. It will basically eclipse my entire backyard from the sun. The sun sets on the west, and I've included some photos there showing the way the sun sets in the backyard. So I will literally have no sun on my deck. But also, I think there's other opportunities. It's substantially further back than the extension at 18 Queensdale. It's almost double that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what is the trend on the street in terms of your
Is this in keeping with what's there now?
It's much, much larger than 18 Queensdale. And some of the other extensions are not 2 stories. So I hope that you'll agree that given the small size of this lot, this is a big impact in a small space. So I invite you to take a look at page 3. If you look at the bottom photograph, I circled where the 18 Queensdale extension ends, and then I put a rock on the fence showing the 6.3 meter extension where that will go, and showing, of course, the sunset there. So it will be a big impact, especially 2 stories. And if you look at page 4, you can just see how the sun goes over top of the west side of the property over 18 Queensdale, and you can see how 20 Queensdale doesn't get any sun. So that will basically be my house after the extension. But this extension that exists on 18 Queensdale is approximately 3 meters. That's my understanding. And he's asking for 6.3 meters.
Okay, we only have the one speaker. You're okay. Okay, so let's have Mr. Kadra respond to your concerns. Thank you for the presentation.
So, Mr. Chair, in terms of the access to the backyard, I just want to highlight that what we're proposing will not impact the neighbor in any way in terms of accessibility to her backyard. And we're not encroaching on the right-of-way. That would actually be pointed out if we were to through the zoning review. And we did obtain
a little closer to the microphone, or thank you.
Do you hear me better now? Yeah. So I was saying that we're not encroaching on the right-of-way in any way, and we're not impeding the access to the backyard of the neighbor in any way. I did talk to the neighbor earlier, and we are willing to recess our addition so that the side yard on the first floor only becomes 0.94 meters, so that because she's concerned about our access to our backyard, and we want to satisfy her concerns, although...
Also the issue of light, you know, in terms of, and whether that's an appropriate, are there other examples of additions, 2-story additions that are that far?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's very...
The other one is a 1-story on the other side.
That only applies to 18 Queensdale, but on the street and in the area overall, there are quite a few like references for house additions with higher gross floor areas and coverages and building lengths and heights.
Well, so my concern is the length of the addition. I know you're not getting a length variance, but the size, let me rephrase that, the size of the addition, and you've mentioned coverages, and we can look at numbers, but I think in this case, often we see a coverage variance combined with not just the addition, but other accessory structures on the lot. In this case, this is all addition. And you're asking for a coverage variance of, what is it, 48? Is it 48?
48%.
48%. And in my experience, we see that the coverage combined with a shed, a garage, and that's not the case here. So in my view, the coverage combined with the floor space index makes this to be, even though you're not asking for a depth variance or a length variance, makes this to be a sizable addition given the size of the lot, in my view. So while you might have numbers for coverage variances in the area that are similar, I think in this case, I don't know if the other ones have accessory structures, but there's not one here to.
No, there's none.
And anyway, you haven't given us any, precedence on this part of Queensdale on this side of the street to show that wing is appropriate and typical.
In addition, Mr. Chairman, if there is a right-of-way, and it appears there is on the survey of .41, and the request is for an east side yard setback of .37, that in fact does impact the right-of-way. It does appear that part of the addition is on the right-of-way. I don't know how the applicant can say I'm not impeding the right-of-way. In fact, if the setback is less than the right-of-way.
It shows on his plans.
Yeah, so.
Okay, are we ready for a motion?
Okay.
I don't know if you'd like to finish. I guess you're entitled to, you still have some time remaining in terms of your rebuttal to the issue.
I also.
So what about the issue, because we've heard from your neighbor, Ms. Blakey, about the fact that I know there is really no right to sunshine or whatever.
Yes,
these are very small lots, very close to one another.
Yes, I was hoping to address that.
The impact. Yeah, we
yes.
can address that?
Yes, please. So we conducted a shade study, and as you understand that this is a north-facing backyard, the neighbor's west side doesn't have any windows, so in terms of the house itself is not going to be impacted. In terms of their deck at the backyard, that's the only portion of the house that will suffer from shadow only between 3:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. During summer. So I would be happy to submit this, and we would be happy to. I already have the revised drawings. I didn't have time to get it in time with Teresa yesterday.
What revised drawings?
So, to address the concern of the neighbor, we were willing.
You didn't mention that in your. Did you mention that in your original presentation that you had revised plans? Like, we've been listening to this for, 15 minutes now, and you're telling us you have revised plans. I don't think we can accept.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to give them the chance to talk. Sorry. I wanted to give them the chance to talk, that's all.
I see.
I apologize if...
Right, because in your original application, your original presentation, that's when you should have told us about some revisions.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I was aware that they had concern, and I have the drawings also.
What would those drawings show?
We are increasing the side yard setback for the addition on the first floor to 0.94, and reducing the floor space index.
And what about it would cantilever out onto the second floor?
Yes, Mr.
Chair. You want that, but not on the first floor, you're going to bring it in and it'll cantilever out. I don't see how that helps the neighbor.
Changes the other.
And also changes, you can't redesign now. Even if you'd raised it at the outset of your presentation, there was one issue, but certainly to raise it at the 11th hour as in your rebuttal is not really appropriate.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Committee members, are we ready for a motion?
I am. I don't know if anybody else is.
Go ahead.
Okay. Notwithstanding, even with the revisions, I still think this, and we're not entertaining the revisions, but in my view, I don't think this application meets the four tests for minor variance. As I alluded to, the lot coverage is significant. You don't have any other accessory structures that eating up the lot coverage. It's all in the back of this house. As well, that combined with the floor space index, I feel that this is a very large addition that's not appropriate for the surrounding context of the neighborhood, and my motion is for refusal of the application.
All in favor? Okay, the application is refused. Make sure you fill out the white decision request cards in the event of an appeal to the TLAB in order that you get notice of that. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 14, 50 Poplar Plains Road, the Maben School. There's an application to alter an existing three-story school by constructing a one-story rear addition and completing interior alterations throughout for the purpose of modernizing and improving the buildings and facilities. We have on this application covering letter from Wood Bull, agent, planning rationale provided by Urban Strategies on behalf of the applicant, a traffic operation and parking study prepared by EXP on behalf of the applicant, a previous OMB decision requesting affecting the property, and Committee of Adjustment decisions in 1978, 1989, 1990 affecting the property. We have a staff report from Community Planning requesting a condition of approval to be substantially in accordance with respect to the December 12 plans. We have transportation planning comments. We have correspondence and no opposition from 19 form letter petition and support signed by various neighbours on Cottingham, Rathnally, McPherson and McMaster and Poplar Plains and Cottingham and Bolton. Correspondence in concern from 52 Poplar Plains next door, 246 Cottingham and 79 Bolton. And correspondence in opposition from 83 Bolton, 53 Poplar Plains, 52 Poplar Plains, and 49 Poplar Plains. Okay. And that's what we have. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Good morning still.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for hearing this today. I'm here with some other members of the team, including Nancy, the principal of the school, and Robert Palomo, the architect, and they can speak to any questions there. I want to just walk you through a little bit about where this application is coming from, and I have this package of some images to help understand. A lot of it is in the package of materials already submitted, but helps to focus the discussion.
Just to interrupt for a second, we need your name for the record.
Oh, sorry, missed that part. Benjamin Hoff, 197 Spadina Avenue. So the Mabin School was originally converted to educational uses in 1946. And the Mabin School has been operating on the site since '83. There was a site-specific bylaw in the early 90s, and that capped enrollment at 150 students, and no variances are being requested to that, just to be clear. Like many schools, Mabin is embedded within a neighborhood, and although unlike many larger schools, it's a size and scale that's kind of consistent with the fabric of the neighborhood and the context. Poplar Plains neighborhood itself, you can see some of the surrounding context on page 3, is fairly dynamic. It has variation in parcel sizes, setbacks, building size, and architecture styles. Page 4 shows some of the buildings in the immediate surroundings. And map 5 shows the context and some of the parcel sizes and the differentiation in building footprints and sizes and parcel footprints and sizes. And so the proposed project responds to the scale and character of the surrounding neighborhood while undertaking much needed renewal. And just as a note, the blue dots on that map, on map page 5, indicate the letters of non-objection. Those are the locations. So the proposed renovation would make better use of the existing facility, mainly modernizing the existing building, improving classroom experiences, allowing for flexible learning spaces, enhancing pickup and drop-off, which is an important point, and would, as I stated before, not see an increase in enrollment. The school has reached out to the community. Beginning already in 2014, there have been multiple community meetings, attending residents association meetings, circulating flyers, knocking on doors with the neighborhoods, and meetings with the councillor's office and city staff. And in response to those discussions, there have been refinements to the design, including a reduction in height of the addition. That's represented in the current submission, increasing the north setback, eliminating glazing in certain locations on the addition to minimize privacy concerns, implementing an off-site parking strategy, and responding to other concerns. So the proposed renovation triggers a number of variances, and they're to both the two zoning bylaws, and include the typical matters such as gross floor area, setbacks, height, parking, ancillary building locations. They're not unlike some of the variances that are requested in other residential buildings in the surrounding context. So I just want to be clear that the zoning review provides clarity that the school is not a legal non-conforming use, it is a permitted use, and that the letter of support from planning staff have clarified that the Committee of Adjustment is the appropriate venue for hearing the application. So the plan here on page 7 shows some of the details of the areas of major change, including the footprint of the existing building is in gray. The proposed addition is in blue, and you can see the outline in red of the existing footprint of the existing building on the north side. New play areas are in green, and the reduced parking area and storage area is on the south side in orange. The purple band along the street is the proposed pickup and drop-off facility to address the drop-off concerns. Setback variances are triggered due to the unusual shape of the parcel size, but the rear setback is very minor in one corner of the site. The parking considerations have, for staff parking, have been addressed through proposed off-site strategy as reflected in the parking reports. The height variances...
Your client is content to comply with that condition about the 13 off-site parking spots within 300 meters that have to be accessed to the donor site?
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
And then the height variances themselves are only for the existing building and changes to the roof profile, not an increase in height. The addition is not triggering height variances. So there have been a number of operational issues that have already begun to be addressed by the school, including incorporating better conditions and monitoring of pickup and drop-off, better security arrangements and monitoring of off-hour activities. And so the school has been responsive to some of the concerns raised in the dialogue with the community so far, excuse me. So in summary, the proposed variances meet the tests under the Planning Act. The proposed renovation and addition will allow for the modernization of what is a very tired facility. Really the addition has been designed to sensitively fit within the fabric of the community. Planning and transportation staff have obviously provided letters supporting this. I think there's a commitment to an ongoing dialogue with the community through the process of, should it be approved, of construction, ongoing management of the school activities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
You made reference to negotiating with the area councillor. Is he in support of the proposal as we have it before us today?
I don't believe he's submitted anything in the file on the application.
No, he hasn't. Is your understanding that he supports it?
I wouldn't want to speak for the councillor. There have been discussions with both the residents and the Maben School and representatives in the room. He has responded to the concerns that have been raised by the residents, but has tried to balance the dialogue that's happened to date.
Anyway, we don't have a letter before us from the councillor one way or the other.
But we did object previously, and I was just concerned with that. And the other area that I'm concerned about is the area that's yellow on that plan. Mm-hmm. If I'm reading it correctly, that's where garbage storage is. Is it currently the location for garbage storage on the site?
There is open garbage storage on the site right now. So the accessory building, which triggers some variances, the small accessory building in that location would consolidate that into an enclosed smaller location.
So it'll take a bin within a building. The bin will go inside a building, and that's the reason the parking's removed from the front, because you have to have access for the garbage trucks?
Well, it's not a huge garbage truck type of activity happening there, but yes, it consolidates and more tightly locates the footprint of that garbage storage area.
And is that where garbage is currently stored, in that area?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Question as well. Just to clarify, I think I already know the answer, but in terms of the reduction in parking spaces within the lot, that currently those spaces are used for the teachers or employees only. Is that correct? Has no impact on drop-off or pickup?
No, they're not used for pickup and drop-off activities during the normal times of the day.
Currently, okay.
There is visitor parking that's included there, and it may be included in the future in one of those parking spaces.
How much visitor parking is there?
Well, currently there's a supply of 13 spaces. The requirement under the zoning is only 6 parking spaces. So the visitor parking spaces isn't specifically determined, but the intention would be to provide for visitor parking spaces.
Okay, Mr. Huff, I see one of the affected neighbors at 53 is talking about, as you would normally have with a school in the vicinity of traffic problems and issues. But as I take it, this application will not increase enrollment beyond the cap. I don't know if you're at the cap currently at 150 or below, but certainly you're not applying to increase the cap. It's to modernize the school, not to bring in more students. So certainly the parking situation, would it be worsened by the application, or fact that you're creating a lay-by, that there's some efforts to improve the parking and by having the off-site parking.
Yeah, so I think it's important to separate the parking and the pickup and drop-off activity.
Right.
The pickup and drop-off activity would be improved, and you're correct, there wouldn't be an increase. The enrollment's currently at 148, and there's no application to increase that 150 cap. The parking, it's through an off-site program. The school has already begun to lease spaces and secure arrangements to, in the future, lease spaces in the nearby community.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask a question about the cap? The cap is a zoning bylaw provision in terms of the cap?
Correct.
So it is entrenched in the zoning bylaw?
It's embedded in the site-specific zoning bylaw from the early 90s, yeah.
So you need to come back to Bayard.
Absolutely.
Zone, whatever you do. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Huff, let's hear from the neighbors. Do we have are all these people, are you all here on this application? Because you're not sitting at, usually affects everyone in the front row. Do we have a spokesperson, or how many people wish to speak?
Not a single one, but we may have 3.
Okay, if you can just please keep it as brief as possible then. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Excuse me, if we may, we're residents of Rathnelly as well, in favor of the project. Would you prefer that we speak before or after opposition?
I guess since this gentleman's already at the podium.
Okay, so we'll just defer.
Okay, we're just going to have one spokesperson for the neighbors and for the Republic of Rathnelly Neighborhood Association. Are you actually just neighbors, or you actually have some, there isn't, you're representing?
They're neighbors and parents.
The Ratepayers Association.
No, but nobody here is from I'm on the executive of the Ratepayers Association, and I would say nobody in this room is speaking on behalf of the Ratepayers Association. We're speaking.
Okay, you're speaking on your own behalf.
Yes,
awesome.
As neighbors.
Okay.
All of us, including our
Thank you.
opposition members.
Those in favor.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is John Pierce, and along with my wife and our 6-year-old twin daughter and son, we live next door, 52 Poplar Plains Road in the South Hill area of Toronto. Our home, as I mentioned, is immediately next door to the north of the applicant's property, if that's helpful to the layouts. And while my family and I are opposed to the proposed development, I would like the committee to know that from the very first time I heard about the Mabins plan to upgrade and expand their building, I indicated that with appropriate consideration of the impacts on our home in the area, we would work with the school to realize their objectives. We love our home, the area. We knowingly bought next door to a small private school which has occupied this large century home in its current form for at least 3 decades, perhaps a day school prior to that time. But at the end of the day, this is about the changes that are proposed and looking forward more than back. You've heard from the school about the various meetings we've had. I think it's fair to say we have tried. I have tried, my neighbors have tried, the Mabins board and representatives have tried to find compromise, and we continue to try. Okay. But at this stage, we've been unsuccessful.
In terms of you personally, I guess the extension or the addition, the new one-story large addition, which we understand is not for additional students, is away from your home, correct?
It is immediately to the south of my home and would extend more or less to the rear of my property line. It has been referred to as a single-story addition. That's correct. I was going to come to this, but I can jump ahead. That is a view across the back deck of my home, both as it sits today, and appreciating I don't own light, I don't own open space, but in consideration of impacts, what I hope to represent there, doing the best I could to approximate the scale of that single-story building on top of an existing gymnasium, is that this is quite an imposing structure that will sit over our yard. I mean, if I could jump into the tests that I know that you'll have to consider, we've understood that this was legal non-conforming, so I understand there's 4 tests and then 3 tests, perhaps mistaken in that regard.
It's not legal non-conforming.
Okay, so I'll hold my comments in that regard, but as to the first 4 tests around whether a variance is minor, there are 17 variances associated with this proposal, which in our view is simply too large to be considered minor.
Right.
And I'm
we've heard from the applicant, and perhaps we can have him in rebuttal go through it, that a lot of these variances refer to the portion, what's existing there today.
To my understanding, the principal one in that regard is the height. That refers to the existing building. The balance of the variances actually do pertain to the addition, specifically side yard setback, rear yard setback, soft landscaping, building depth, lot coverage, and the area of the structure itself. It is very large in terms of whether it could be considered minor. We think it's extremely important to the neighborhood and community. The impacts, some of which I've spoken to, come from the pure size and mass of the building, which I dare say is unprecedented anywhere within this neighborhood. This area, save for a City of Toronto pumping station built around the turn of the century, is 99% residential. This school, once the home of Billy Bishop, has operated with generous grounds that have allowed it to fit seamlessly within the fabric of this neighborhood. You wouldn't honestly know there was a school there today driving by, and that stands to change with this addition.
And I really appreciate that you mentioned at the outset that you bought the house knowing there was a school next door.
I did.
Not that someone comes and they say, oh my God.
No, and this is, I hope very much to be forward-looking in my comments and the concerns relative to the new structure. There are a few relative to the enrollment and whether it is actually nailed down permanently, and there's a host of issues around traffic and parking that could flow from an increase in the enrollment. My best direction to that point has been from the city planner, Emily Rossini, who indicated that the cap was not a bylaw matter. It happens to appear there today, but from her perspective, and I stand to be corrected, that it was not enforceable in that context, or at the least that we could find ourselves before the Committee of Adjustment in the future with another application to increase enrollment and potential parking and traffic issues.
Now, do we know, and we can hear again from the applicant, that what's being built are gymnasium, they're not actually building additional class sizes, or there's
certainly been
accommodate more students or not?
There's been an explanation of music rooms, art rooms, science rooms, whether those could be repurposed. I wouldn't. That's not my expertise. It's a generous increase in the space of the building relative to holding the student population as it has been within this existing building for some 30 years. The question around whether it's desirable, I think, goes largely to the character of the area, which is very residential. I don't personally make any complaint as to the modern style of the building. Ours is, as an unprotected area of the city, one that's probably seen less change than many, many others. But there is some modern structure. It's really about the sum of the parts and what that ultimately looks like. The 17 variances, whether that meets the general intent and purpose, being a residential area, mature trees, an open setting, and so forth. And I think, just in the interest of time, I'd love to jump to a quick conclusion for you. The variances, to my wife's and my view, and to many of our neighbors, are just not minor. They will affect the way that we use our backyard, our home, our major principal windows, which face to the south, and today enjoy much of that sunlight. The questions of parking and enrollment may be addressable, but I don't believe that they have been today. In terms of the absolute commitment of maintaining parking to ensure that we don't exacerbate the existing challenges the school brings, that is a concern that I have along with the enrollment increase. We know that we have a shadow study which City Planner Diane Silver has commented, and which I have in writing, stating it is not accurate. It needs to be updated. I have told the Maben that it is missing things like rooftop mechanicals, which may not be within your purview for consideration, but they do go to overall mass and scale and height and impact of the building. We know the building will be very large. We know it will dominate the streetscape. We know it will overshadow many of the surrounding homes. And ultimately, my objective every minute to this point has been to influence it positively, to say, Maben, I can support you. We're happy to have a school next door. We just need some balancing of those impacts on our home and our yard, where I hope to be able to raise my kids for the next 15 or more years. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Pierce before he steps away from the podium? No. Okay. We have another speaker. If we since you were the spokesperson, you went on for about 8 minutes, so if maybe the further speakers can try to be a little more concise.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that presentation.
To put the comments in context, would it be possible for the applicant to come back for just 1 second and clarify what the dotted red line is on his proposed improvements? We're trying to compare the proposal and the submission that was just made relative to what currently exists, and the dotted red line is confusing.
Okay. It's the applicant.
We could accept.
Well, maybe it'd be helpful to know it now before we hear, so we have that information. So let's just hear quickly from Mr. Huff again.
Yeah. So
the dotted red line.
The dotted red line is the footprint of the existing building, the existing structure, on which the addition actually sits on the existing foundation.
Okay, and it's a one-story structure existing.
But it's existing, but it's submerged. So there's a gym actually that's okay. Below grade, but sits slightly above.
And in terms of what we just saw, if you looked out from the property to the north, most of that is not seen because it's below ground.
Yes, so you can see the green outlined renovated area is the existing structure. The addition the addition sits then on top of the gym roof.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Right. So if you go back to the other plan, the blue, in terms of the dotted line, the blue is all new, or there's?
The blue is new, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. You should probably say that up at the podium, because we can't get picked up by the microphone. So you're at 79 Bolton.
That's right. So I sent through,
Your
my name is Pete Leving. My wife and I have lived at 79 Bolton, directly behind and to the west of the proposed Maven School development. In a second, I'm going to refer you to that diagram. We've proudly proclaimed that we're some of the longest duration school neighbors. We like having the school kids around, and we believe the principal is marvelous wherever she is. Let's see. So I will refer you to this diagram. So Mr. Pierce here lives in the Poplar Plains home. A lot of the rest of us live on Bolton Drive, which is where the numbers are at the very top of the diagram. So there's actually, you see I've got arrows there and it says down. Yeah. Our area is a ravine. It's a very pretty area. And so there's an extreme slope from that curved line at the top, which is the fence, the school fence. There's an extreme slope down into my property, number 79, and to the others as well. Okay. So I'm going to try to refer to what I call my points as opposed to conflicts with what John just mentioned. So based on the number of minor variances, we believe the design is short-sighted, focusing on, my wife and I, that is, focusing on minimizing costs and necessary approvals by prioritizing building on below ground foundation, but causing adverse effects to at least the closest neighbor to the north and to the west Bolton Drive neighbors. So the bottom line is, in the sketch, the new deep modern extension sitting, it sits a certain amount, the gym sits a certain amount above the ground, maybe roughly 5 feet, I can't really say exactly. And then the building itself sits 20 feet up. So I'm in my house way down a hill, a 20 20-foot hill. So I'm looking up, and I'm seeing it like 50 to 60 feet above my head kind of thing. So that sets the area. So the new, very deep and tall structure with a flat roof. The underground structure at the north end of the property is proposed to be replicated above ground with the new, very deep and tall structure with the flat roof and all glass, pretty much all glass panels. The very deep modern extension, if you look at the bylaw violations, it actually shows that that building is 53 feet deeper into the property than is allowed in the bylaw. And if you notice Mr. Pierce's home, his entire backyard is obscured to the left by the new extension. Whereas all of the rest of us will just look up the hill and see the upper part of the building. Beyond that, the school is seeking approval for about 3,837 square feet. That is 26% more floor space than allowed by the city. I converted the meters. For the entire schoolyard, which includes expansive play areas. Now, I'd like to point out that if a narrow lot, 3-story house was built in the same location, it would not be permitted to be built because it goes so deep into the property and the density would be too great. So I'm saying if there was another property line, not on Mr. Pierce's side, but on the other side, this is basically all building. So the bottom line is, if the school wasn't in existence whatsoever, but if you built on the property, you could very easily build a building that would be acceptable to the entire community. It's just the main topic here is the school was in a jam because they wanted to build on top of this gym that's down in the basement of the school.
Including comment or anything, we need to keep moving.
Sure. Let's see now. Another thing, all of the perimeter setbacks, if you tally the amount of setbacks, I made a guesstimate as to the grand total of the setback space, and it adds up to about 8,800 square feet of grand total setback area. So you could build two houses at least on the property that is being asked to be excused in terms of setbacks, the violations on the setbacks, the reduction of the setbacks. Another consideration is, if you look at that curved fence, for many, many years, I guess there's one more thing I never mentioned. If you think of 2 curved lines instead of 1 curved line, the city actually owns some of the property down the slope all the way along that curved line. So it's important to ensure that the property is not considered to still be to still include the property on the other side of the school fence.
This area here, between the Bolton properties and this curve, looks like there's something noted here. This area here.
Yeah, so the school actually owns some of the property along the hill, all the way along the hill.
Well, I think it would show that.
So it's imperative all of the calculations for this development do not include that because the neighbors have been maintaining that property for 50 years.
And it looks like they had a zoning review, so in the property is outlined, they wouldn't be able to build on property that's not theirs. So I think that buffer that we see along the curve is not what they're building on in any case.
No, they're not building on it. All I'm saying is, isn't it true that it shouldn't be included in the calculations of
I
the?
assume it's not. If it's not their property, it wouldn't be included, even though it is a buffer on city, as you say, it's on city property. Mr. Levine, if you could try to wrap up, because.
Yep, okay.
Yeah. We do have your written submissions here.
Okay. I'd just like to point out to you, in the document, I have some colored photographs, and that shows the view from my backyard. And so, again, that's showing the 20 feet roughly vertically from the bottom of my property to the base of the fence. Then you're going to add another roughly 5 feet and another 20 some odd feet, 20 feet, and maybe the HVAC equipment. So when John was talking about shadows, the shadow study being incomplete, that's pretty important. The last point I'd like to make is there are pictures of a lot of houses in my attachment, and what they are, they represent what the other buildings in the area look like. So
yeah, this is a school, this is not a house, right? So I appreciate what you mentioned is if the school wasn't there and you were building a house, you wouldn't be allowed to do, and we take that, I understand that point.
So I went through one of the documents that the school or its architect prepared.
Yes.
Referred to sort of non-impact, or sorry, the gradual versus immediate change, that sort of thing. And so by introducing such an enormously deep structure, all glass with multiple layers of panels of glass vertically, is a bit of a shock to the community.
Okay.
Anyway.
Hey, thanks, Mr.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other speakers who'd like to weigh in? Just please briefly. Right, and then the people, we'd like to hear from someone in favor.
Right. So, my name's Sean Lawrence. I live at 223 Cottingham Street. So I'm
223
Cottingham. So I live at the on the street which runs towards Poplar Plains, and the school is across that intersection. I'll try to be brief because I think my main concern is that, as Mr. Pierce has pointed out to you, obviously we're dealing with an application here that is looking for a significant number of variances, and I think against that, the background has been that there are significant numbers of concerns, and I think what you've seen here today and the letters that have been submitted, there's significant opposition within the neighborhood to the change. Nobody's sitting here saying the school shouldn't exist. Nobody is sitting here saying the school shouldn't be allowed to grow. Frankly, I think we're all in favor of that to some extent. The concern is that this is happening in a way that it impacts different people in the neighborhood in different ways. Mr. Pierce, massing and height are his main concerns. I'm down the street. Parking, which is not necessarily directly related to this, there is a parking issue in the neighborhood which I think we need to deal with, and the Maben needs to be part of that discussion. What I'm trying to lead up to is that my belief is that there are still a number of questions to be resolved with respect to this application. We've been sitting outside the committee room talking to representatives from the school, and there's still a number of things where they're having to get back to us. They will, they'll take it back to the board. I'm not suggesting for a second they won't. The answers still aren't clear. And I would...
With respect to construction issues, or
well, for instance...
Here we deal with the build forum and what they're seeking to do, and obviously for something that's complicated, there's other issues, but...
Right.
I think what we had, what's before us is enough for us to make a decision.
All right. The only thing I would ask is, I think, given against all of that, I would ask that you consider that perhaps this should be more properly be dealt with through a zoning bylaw amendment, or at least I would ask at a minimum ask for a deferral so that we can resolve these issues with the school and come back with an application that's got the backing of the full community behind it.
Well, we can't, you know, a deferral request would have been made at the outset. We've been hearing this for over half an hour now. So
okay.
Ultimately, I think this thing may likely be going to the T-Lab in any event, but that remains to be seen. But I think we have enough before us to make a fulsome decision on this.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Another gentleman back there. He's at Cottingham, 223. 223.
Afternoon, gentlemen and lady. My name is Harry Figov, F-I-G-O-V, and I live at 246 Cottingham Street, and I made a submission, so I'm just not going to repeat that. I just want to bring up a few points regarding the parking, and we've had some discussions this morning, and some of the answers given here may be at slight variance to what they said to us when we sat and met. I've been living on the street since 1986, so I was part of the last application, and it was at the Committee of Adjustments, and have spoken in the past. I just want you to understand what has happened with respect to the parking on Cottingham Street is it used to be street-specific parking, and then it became zoning parking, and you've got also a number of renters, so there are a lot more permits being issued, which is causing congestion on the street. The second thing is in terms of the last expansion where we had an agreement, or one of the issues they said they would do was build a lay-by, and it was not built 20 years ago with the last agreement. Also, in terms of the cap on the students that you asked about this morning, there was supposed to be that we could go yearly and meet with the Maben School, and they would give us the number of students at the school, and that did not occur. They refused to disclose it in the past. I'm not saying it would still be the same today. Mr. Kniffel, I'm not sure if that's how I pronounce your name, so you asked about the councillor. One of the things I'm not sure, and I'm going to bring this up, but very carefully, is my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that he may have had or has a child at that school, so I don't know if the councillor is conflicted. I've never asked him that. And Ms. Valentini, you also asked about the parking. I went and I counted 12 spaces, maybe it takes 13 spaces. I know the bylaw says 6 and they want to go down to 2. Also, you will ask one of the panel asked about visitor parking. When I asked about what was said to me by the principal, they'll keep one space for visitors, then I heard Mr. Hoff saying they're not sure if they'll have visitor parking. So parking is a very critical issue, and a lay-by would be a very critical issue because it was promised last time and not delivered on, specifically for the safety of the kids, because it's a miracle in the last 30 years that I've lived there that there has not been an accident. So I just appreciate your time. The other last issue is in terms of the renting of parking spots. They've got 2 spots that they rent because I told the landlord to go and ask them, but they mentioned to me this morning he's offered another 5 spots, but they won't rent till they need. So I don't believe we have assurances that the parking spots will be resolved, you know, given the answer I've got. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Figov. Let's hear from representative of the neighborhood in favor of the application. I understand you're speaking on your own behalf and not on behalf of the Rathnalley Ratepayer Association. Okay. Could we get your name and address, please?
Sure. It's Nicole Anderson, and I'm at 208 Cottingham Street, which just is a block away in an old Victorian. It is a beautiful neighborhood. It's one of the things that attract us there. I do want to say I am on the executive of the Ratepayers Association, speaking on behalf of myself as a neighbor. I also have 2 children at the Maben School. It was, so, you know, there are a lot of young families in the neighborhood who are recent arrivals. We've been there 5 years. And one of the magnets is the Maben School. We have new leadership at the Maven School in Nancy of the past 2 years, and she's just been nominated for the Donner Prize on her specific philosophy on nurturing children to be change makers. So it is a school that lives and breathes empathy, and it's one that we're very proud of. So it's a small school. We, as parents, speaking as a parent, we'd like to keep it at 150 as well. So we'll be, you know, the parent association will be lobbying for that. The school itself, I've spoken to other parents who have toured the school, and they've chosen to go to another school because it is falling apart. My children are in kindergarten and grade 2. The grade 1 classroom is really in need of repair. There isn't enough space for the children. There isn't enough play space for the children. So we love that the new parking lot is going to be green space. And as a neighbor, looking at green space versus a parking lot is actually more aesthetically pleasing. So I think there are a number of good things happening here. There are a number of people in the neighborhood. You've received 20 letters from families, households who are okay with the new proposal. The new addition, the height is actually lower than the current roof line of the original building. It is an integration space, so one of the big philosophies of the school and the purpose for that building is that we'd like all the grades to get together and share learning and be together. So, I mean, it's a very important part of the school's philosophy. In terms of parking, there are a lot of neighbors who are looking to rent out their space. I think that is a commitment from the school that I've heard of. In terms of traffic on Poplar Plains, it is a nightmare. We have Brown School at the top. That is a giant school, and it's getting bigger. I think you've got a monolithic issue up there, which is literally a block away. You have people skirting the Avenue Road nightmare that is traffic and trying to come in through Rathnelly and up Poplar Plains to avoid traffic issues. So I don't think this is just a Maven issue, and I just like to present that in terms of the parking traffic issue. It's a broader issue. I'd also like to just talk about Maven again in terms of engaged in community. They have made a real effort with the new leadership to work with us as a community. And I do have a photo. We do a lantern festival together. This is just from my iPhone. But there is the school is, it is listening. Yeah, no, I understand, but we are listening.
Maven School, I don't think they're putting an issue. The neighbors at their school is doing anything but good work in the community.
So it's not closed to these issues, but I think the layaway with the drop-off zone is a great addition. So we're in favor as parents who send our kids to school, as neighbors, and we do know of lots of neighbors who think this is a great idea. I would just like to say that Maven School has wanted to open the doors to allow kids in the neighborhood to play in the schoolyard, but being sensitive to the noise that ensues from playing basketball, like our son used to want to play basketball after hours, they've now put up signs and they've restricted after-school play, which hasn't really been useful for a lot of the parents in the neighborhood who'd like to send their kids to do the after-school basketball, but being sensitive to our surrounding environment, they've said you cannot, and there are big signs saying no basketball. So it doesn't work. So, but you see, some parents would really value that open door policy, and obviously the neighbors close by don't. So I submit that to you.
Okay.
And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Okay, we hear back now from the applicant in rebuttal to the concerns raised by the three neighbors that spoke. Mr. Pierce, Mr. Levine, and Mr. Figov.
Okay, thank you. So what I'll just do is I'm just going to provide some clarification on some of the questions raised, just so we know what we're dealing with, and then a rebuttal to some of the other concerns raised.
Could you include one question? We're bantering back the cap. Where is it? Is it in the bylaw? Where is it?
It's in the site-specific bylaw from 1992. Okay, so one clarification done. I think there was a question around the school survey and the school lands. The survey is very clear where the school lands are. It extends beyond the existing fence line, but that is part of the area of the school site. and reflected in the zoning examiner's review.
Okay. But you do have the fence, and there's no intention to move the fence so that the other lands are inside the...
There's no intention to, at this time, to take over that, that area, to enclose that within a fence, yes. There was a question about what kind of program space is going into the building. The majority of it is flexible space, not teaching space, not classroom space. There is one classroom because the school is actually short a classroom for French in the kindergarten classrooms. So there is one classroom in the front of the building, but the majority is that flex space. From a perspective of parking, the staff are told, new staff coming in are told there is no parking available on site, and the arrangements are made through securing off-site parking. I just wanted to be clear, there seemed to be a discrepancy, but I was saying that there can be a visitor parking space, or there will be a visitor parking space in the orange area on site. So there wasn't a discrepancy between in messaging from our part, or if there was, I apologize. And I think there's just a couple other things from the question about kind of unrealized design intentions and measures that were coming forward late. I think there are a number of considerations that are beyond the scope of a committee of adjustment application around HVAC, trees, the extent of glazing and privacy. All of those are opportunities for further dialogue with the community. We've made, the school has made some commitments already on those matters. So I just wanted to speak then to the concerns about the height and setback and the questions raised. And if you could put the east elevation up, Brendan. So I did. I've seen Mr. Pierce's drawing, and I'm not sure exactly how it was prepared, but given the condition that we're illustrating here and the relationship of heights between Mr. Pierce's house to the north and the addition, it doesn't appear to be consistent in terms of...
You would disagree with this depiction by Mr. Pierce of what the...
I've only yes, it doesn't appear to be consistent to me. I haven't had a chance to discuss how it was prepared. Okay. And I think just to, a number of moves have been made, including as I mentioned, the reduction in glazing to eliminate the privacy concerns. The building itself, the proposed addition, is lower than the surrounding context. It's obviously sits well below the maximum zoning height. And the shadow, there was a shadow analysis done. I'm not sure of the nature of the planner, Ms. Silver's comments in 2014, but there is no shadow impact on the Pierce's properties in both June and the equinoxes, the March and September 21. I should be clear that, while we had one person speak up, there are 19 letters of non-objection from residents in the surrounding community. And so there is a support for the Mabin School within the surrounding community, and maybe not everyone showed up here, but there is a strong support. But I think just to step back, schools are really important to communities, but they have to always be sensitively inserted, and any kind of addition like this has to be sensitively considered. The official plan and zoning support these types of institutions and communities. And I think the design process has been very sensitive to that fact, and the changes that have been made, the kind of scale of what's coming forward have been very much responsive to the dialogue with the community and sensitive to the nature of the surrounding community. And so I think, again, just to reiterate, there is a commitment to ongoing dialogue, and we look forward to further dialogue with the folks in the room today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Huff. Committee members? Any questions, residual questions for the applicant and or for any of the neighbors? Or are we ready to take this matter? So we're now in committee, we'll take it into committee, so there's no more discussion unless committee member asks your question. And we'll have some deliberation and someone will make a motion. I just want to thank everyone for really good presentations, both for the applicant and from the neighbors.
No, it's not.
Is it part of the site plan
Proposed,
process?
yeah.
It's on the plan?
Right. Maybe put specific reference to that.
They didn't comment on the lay-by? I'm not sure.
It says altar building should be constructed substantially in accordance with the plans by ARC Architects, date stamped December 12th.
To address the point that was just raised, perhaps that condition, if it were approved, should state that the altered building and the site is to be developed in accordance with, not just the building.
And in particular, we can mention the lay-by in any decision. We're in committee. Do you have a question for anyone?
We're talking just with the plan, we're not talking about traffic. And then traffic. Traffic plan, okay. I'm just looking at where the lay-by is and how come no one's commented on it?
What is?
I think they're all in favor of it. Neighbors in favor of the lay-by.
No, I know, but staff.
And there was a comment earlier that it was promised
It's mentioned in the letter they sent to the getting neighborhood support, garnering support. They said, and there's going to be a lay-by. If you look at the form letter, they didn't give them copies. It says permit a new addition, northern portion, interior and roof renovations are reconfigured.
can bring a motion forward. Okay. So this is a tricky application, I think, obviously, given the amount of deliberation we've been doing. So I'm prepared to bring a motion forward on this one. My motion is going to be for approval of the application. I've been looking at the variances, and I note that the variances for height don't apply to the addition per se. It applies to the main building. While I appreciate the neighbors' comments about the size of the addition, I'm just noticing there's not a side yard setback variance relating to the addition. There is a rear yard setback variance, but in my view, it's not great. I think it is minor in nature. I think a lot of the issues when I originally looked at the application related to parking and drop-off, and I think I'm satisfied those have been addressed through the conditions requested by staff. As well, we've heard there is a cap on enrollment, and that is embedded in the zoning bylaw, so there's no concern in my view that this is going to, this addition is going to result in an increase in students, which would exacerbate the problem of drop-off and pickup. I think the fact that there is a lay-by being proposed will also help alleviate concerns that seem to be current for drop-off and pickup. How we impose that as a condition, I'm not quite sure. Perhaps we tie it to the site plan. I don't see that lay-by as a condition of staff approval, but I think it's something that I think needs to be addressed in terms of this approval, in my view. So my motion is for approval of the application subject to the conditions set out in the traffic planning, transportation services memo, requiring 13 parking spaces be located in an off-site location within 300 meters of the subject site. Again, these spaces must be surplus to the requirements of the zoning bylaw for the donor site and secured through a long-term lease, as well as the conditions set out in the planning memo that the building be constructed substantially in accordance with the plans that have been submitted to the Community of Adjustment and date stamped on December 12, 2017. Perhaps that might include the site plan, which shows the lay-by. I think that might be appropriate in this case, and I think those are all the conditions I'm suggesting.
I was going to suggest that a friendly amendment, which is building on what you just said, that a condition might be that the site is to be developed substantially in accordance with the site plan.
Sure. Yeah.
And with specifically the provision of a new lay-by, which is shown on the site plan.
Yeah, I think that clarifies my concern.
Clarify that that's what you're focusing in on. Okay, motion. We have a motion.
The lay-by is on the right-of-way. You don't. I mean, that's going to require other.
Well, subject to.
Okay. And if
it's going to need right-of-way management.
Site plan.
The problem that I have if we don't make some reference, so I'm open to another suggestion, is that there was a presentation made previously that when this school was before the municipality previously, a lay-by was promised and not delivered. I'd like to make sure that the lay-by that is promised is delivered, and I need a way of referencing it. The only reference that I have is on the site plan.
Yeah, we can't direct right-of-way management to do that.
So you're saying it might change, it might.
Perhaps Mr. Huff can, Mr. Huff, you have any guidance on that of?
I could potentially provide some assistance. The lay-by does.
Yeah, are you subject to site plan?
Right, it says there's site plan control.
They are subject to site plan control, and it's under consideration now.
Or maybe, send a message to the site plan control that the decision has been predicated on the fact that this lay-by has been offered and accepted and is a significant part of the committee's approval. That they make bona fide efforts to make application for that. We realize we're not the final decision maker on that. We can't, but that is a.
Might I ask one further clarification? You're in the process of getting site plan control approval now. Is that correct? I know there's no guarantees, but generally speaking, what you're proposing has been accepted in terms of the site plan. They're not looking at major revisions. Okay.
Including transportation did review the transportation report, which includes the.
Okay.
It does, okay.
Okay.
Well, then
Okay,
maybe
so we
we
have a
just leave
motion. It's been seconded. We've clarified the issue, Madam Secretary Treasurer, regarding the wording of the fact that the proposal of the motion creates reliance on that lay-by as being central to the acceptance of the, well, so far, the motion in any event. Okay, you're okay with that? Okay, all in favor?
Can we hear that motion again, please?
The motion is to approve the application, subject to...
Transportation services requiring 13 parking spaces being off-site within 300 meters, and that it be built substantially in accordance with the plans that have been submitted to the committee, date stamped December 12th. And then we were trying to figure out wording for the lay-by, but I'm not sure what we have.
Yes, but it's...
Can you read?
The altered building shall be constructed substantially in accordance with the plans by our architect, state stamped, received by Committee of Adjustment December 12th, 2017, and shall include a lay-by to the satisfaction of.
Who normally approves that type of, maybe we should take the lay-by out.
Transportation services?
I think it should say that the lay-by is to be provided substantially in accordance with the site plan. Substantially as illustrated on the site.
Well, with these plans and as approved by, through the site plan process.
That I could, okay, that the site is to be developed substantially in accordance with the site plan, in particular the provision of a lay-by.
Okay, so we have a motion, has been seconded, all in favor? Okay, the motion has been approved.
She doesn't have the wording. We need to slow down
Well.
and get the proper wording.
Subject to the entire set of plans, which includes the site.
Yes.
Which does not show a lay-by.
Site plan does show a lay-by.
It does on our.
Yeah.
It does on ours.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So then just leave it at that. Let's
Okay.
leave it at that.
Lay-by is shown right in front of it. Yeah.
Leave it at that
Where the
without the
purple
specific
part
wording.
is, see where the purple section is? It's noted as a lay-by, yeah. And then these drawings that we have on the agenda is shown as a lay-by.
Okay.
All right.
So all in favor. So thank you, applicant, thank you, neighbors on both sides. Really nice to see everyone, you know, and I suggest you continue to have that dialogue and to a spirit of cooperation. It's a great neighborhood and a great school. Thank you. Okay, we have one more application before we break for a shortened lunch break before we start again at 1:30. So let's call, while everyone leaves the room, let's call the last application for the morning. Item number 15, 122 Albany Avenue. And I'm sorry, if I would have realized, I would have let you go before this long, over hour-long application, but it is what it is. Okay, so 122 Albany, if everyone could just please clear the room, we have one more application. This is an application to alter the existing 2.5-story detached dwelling by constructing a 3-story rear addition, a rear deck, and a front porch. Is there neighbors here and still in opposition? You can come forward and sit at the table at the front, please. We have before us a shadow study from the agent, received May 11th, a previous decision of the committee affecting the property. We have urban forestry requesting conditions number 1 and 2. And we have correspondence and support from the Annex Ratepayers Association and a report from community planning as well. Do you have community planning?
Do we have a community planning?
I don't know, dear.
No concerns, yeah.
Oh, just stating that they have no concerns. From Robert Ursini. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Gloria Apostolou. I'm the architect and agent for the owners.
Okay.
We're proposing a 2.13 meter rear addition on the 2 lower levels. On the 3rd floor, the roof slopes back to a smaller footprint on the 3rd floor.
Okay.
The addition is required to accommodate the homeowner's needs. They have 4 kids. And the lot and the house are too narrow to compact the layout of the floor plan, so we can't have bedrooms side by side. They have to be laid out in a linear fashion.
Okay.
So because of this, we are incurring variance for building depth and density. The balance of the variances are because we're working with the existing house and we're aligning with the existing side yard setbacks. The front yard setback of the house is the same as the existing, the current. We have spoken with the neighbors on both sides of us. We have showed them the shadow studies, and they are fine with that. There's no issue with this. The neighbor on the north has come today to express a window relocation on the 3rd floor, and we met earlier today and agreed on moving a window on the 3rd floor. I'm not sure if that is tied to the Committee of Adjustment decision, but it's something that suits our layout, it suits their privacy.
Can you show us where the window is?
So it used to be over here. These two rooms were flipped, the bathroom and the bedroom, and now we're moving it as far away from the edge of the north property as we can.
That's 2nd floor window.
That is 3rd floor.
3rd floor window, okay. It's the one in the bedroom.
Number 2. Yeah.
Bedroom number 2.
So here's where it was. It was there. That's a revised plan.
Yes.
So it was there. She's moved it over to here. Right.
Okay. So that was to address privacy concerns on the neighbor side.
So do we have to attach that elevation as a
Maybe we should make it as a condition.
condition, or?
We don't have that drawing.
I have this printout.
Maybe we can.
No, it doesn't. She's the variances, yeah.
But it's a deal breaker. So if
Maybe we can tie it.
like that, that's the new one. That's the revised one.
Plan.
Okay. Have you got it on the elevation as well? You altered the elevation?
I don't have that elevation. We just discussed it this morning. Previously, we had flipped the rooms because we thought that helped the privacy issues. And it was just this morning that we all...
So this is the north elevation?
Yes.
Say the window in bedroom 2 to be moved, whatever direction that is. That's to the west. West.
To the west.
As far as possible in bedroom 2.
Actually, can you put the elevation on? We've got to get this right. Can you put the elevation on the overhead? You've got an elevation in your submission.
Yes.
The north elevation, you've got a window that's dotted that's been taken out and another one that's in. The one that's in is presumably the one you've moved.
Exactly.
Okay.
I will put that on.
A8? Is that elevation?
A8, yes. Madam Secretary Treasurer, should we see that this is an appropriate approach if the architect was to draw and sign as a professional architect that this new location, can we reference that drawing? I don't know how else to do it. Is there another way that we could do it? Okay, so if she altered this elevation,
Then we can refer to the window on that elevation.
okay, can you do that? Can you
Mark it up.
mark it up and sign it?
So I have an elevation with me, but we've adjusted the window areas a little bit. So the window calculations for building code still need to be done. If it's going to be tied to an elevation, that's my hesitation. Because we are...
I don't think it's, I don't know how we're going to, that's going to affect her
Okay, but I don't know.
calculations for building permit and everything else. It's going to open up a whole can of worms.
It's coming down, yeah, the building permit calculations are the next step. I'm happy to tie it to a plan, because we know it'll go there. I just don't...
Tie it to this floor plan?
Yep.
Into that window? Does that work?
Okay, then-
Just for that window, I don't know how you're going to, or they just have their own private agreement.
Can we determine if that is all the concern of the...
Yeah, and perhaps we should have the neighbor come to the podium, introduce himself, and just so we have something on record that...
I'm in support of the proposal.
Oh, so you're not the neighbor?
No, I am the neighbor, but...
Oh, you are the neighbor.
I had a concern with respect to privacy, and the discussion that we had this morning, and it's been an evolution over the last several weeks, resolves the concern that I have.
Your name and address, sir?
Sorry, my first name is Kent, last name Beatty, at 124 Albany Avenue.
Okay,
directly to
sorry, I hope you enjoyed the... You could have been out of here a lot sooner.
No, we enjoyed the...
the other presentation.
Exactly.
The last one.
So that is my only concern, and moving the window to that end.
So, Mr. Chairman,
thank you.
The reference would be to the window in bedroom number 2, because that's how it's referenced on the plan, to be provided as per the plan that's been signed. Does that work, Anita?
I don't have the plan yet.
She's going to give it to us she's going to sign it. Okay. Can you sign that plan that is up there, please? Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we need the letter?
The letter simply speaks to the movement of the letter. Just the letter?
Says he supports it subject to his privacy concerns being addressed.
Okay. This to Anita?
You just give that to staff, I guess.
The staff.
Okay.
Can you show it to the...
Okay, so we can leave that for 5 minutes.
What's that?
Let's get a motion out, guys.
I have to eat on that. Okay.
Okay,
sure. Mr. Chairman, subject to approval conditions number 1 and 2 of forestry, I'd like to move approval of the application. I'd like to add one other condition, that the window in bedroom number 2 be relocated as per the drawing submitted and signed by the architect at today's meeting. And with that change, Mr. Chairman, I believe that this is clearly appropriate development and meets the 4 tests for variance.
Thank you. Seconder for the motion?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Thank you. Have a good day. Okay, we stand adjourned for the morning.